Aye.
Opposed? Passes on a 5-0. Thank you. Item number 3, Mr. Tocanelli.
Francine.
Good morning. Francine Osborne, Director of Human Resources. The item before you is a recommendation to appoint Colleen Tracy as Health Services Agency Director. Colleen has 32 years of experience servicing the health field. She's currently our Assistant Health Services Agency Director and temporarily assumed these duties in late November. This recommendation is also supported by the former Health Services Agency Director, and we're asking that you formalize this appointment for Colleen today.
Colleen, can you step up to
the hazing begins.
Is this a test? This is a test, Colleen? I just want you to know that.
I certainly hope I do well then. This is Colleen Tracy, Assistant Health Services Agency Director.
Have you thought this through?
Yes, I have thought this through.
Have you?
Yes,
I have. You saw what happened to the last head of that department.
And a signature on it. That's 97% of the people, as Roger stated, that want to be left out, and only 3% of the people that want to be included. And these are overwhelming numbers that tell what they want. They want to be left out of this plan. I was asked by many people at the open house, what else can we do to get them to remove us from this new plan and leave us alone, because we already have our own plan. I was also asked by many of them if we need to protest. Having never done anything like that, I said, I don't think so. But I'm here to ask you today, do we need to bring 573 people up here to this meeting so that you can understand that the people do not want this, or are you going to remove Rancho from this plan?
Thank you.
Morning, Board. I'm Andy Valentine. I'm a stakeholder, property owner in District 5. I didn't write up anything formal this morning. I just want to make some comments to the board. And I was kind of concerned at the last meeting. A gentleman brought something up that just didn't set right with me. It still doesn't. And I have to ask, why are socialist entities like Acorn, Tides, and George Soros putting out money to get the Greater Valley Springs plan passed? It just bothers me that people are interfering in our county that's an outside entity that has a different agenda. And I was wondering why that's going on. I also have to ask why we have so many outside entities taking such an interest in the plan. There seems to be a ton of them, and they all have like little letters like EDA and so on and so on and so on. But I'm not going to list all of them. I'm sure we're all well aware of who they are. You know, the planning should be done in Calaveras County, as we are the ones that are going to be affected by this. It shouldn't be done by outside entities. And I have to ask also, being as all these outside entities are so interested in our general plan and the Greater Valley Springs plan, I have to ask, what's in it for them? What is their interest? Why are they so involved in this? You know, at the present time, the schools are under severe budget cuts. The Greater Valley Springs Plan is proposing high-density development. So I have to ask again, how is the educational system going to cope with all the additional children that we're going to have with high-density development? Who's going to pay for all this? Nobody talks about who's going to pay for everything. These and many other questions should be answered before any type of plan can be proposed. It seems like everybody is just wanting to say, okay, this is the plan, this is what we're going ahead with, and it's like it's set in concrete. I think there has to be a lot more discussion, there has to be a lot more questions answered before we can even think about moving forward with this plan. So what I say is, let's drop the dream. And that's what this is. This is nothing but a dream. And we need to start planning with what we have and keep building on that with what we the people want and can afford. What is now being proposed is not realistic and unaffordable. Stop wasting energy, money, and resources on a plan that is not beneficial to the populace that's involved and the populace that it's supposed to be helping. This plan is not helping anything. I think instead of blindly forging ahead with this plan, Tom at the last meeting said, I think we need to have some study sessions on this, and I think that we have to have more input, and we have to have it come from the people level, not from the government level. Right now, that's all we got. You're not hearing from the people. You're not hearing what the people want. You have to go, you have to ask the people, what do you want? And that's not being done. I also, at a stakeholders meeting...
Mr. Valentine, you have 30 seconds left.
Okay, that's it. Thank you.
Thank you.
Are we open to changing subjects at any point in
Oh,
time?
absolutely. It's open
Okay.
comment, open mic time. It might be welcome.
My name's Jerry Harmon. I live at 832 Surrey Avenue in Copperopolis. It's the Diamond 20 area. First, I'd like to have you listen to this. Is this microphone on?
Yes. We can't tell what it is, Mr. Harmon.
Okay.
It's either a very
Oh, it's a
sick
cow.
bovine or it's a motorcycle.
It's on.
Okay. The point being is, I wanted to irritate you as badly as I'm irritated every day. During Christmas vacation, 11 of 14 days, neighbors across the street have taken about 5 acres of their 20 acres, turned it into an off-road vehicle park. Of those 11 days, I listened to their motor...
Excuse me.
Yes.
They've turned it into a what?
Off-road vehicle park.
Thank you.
Including taking heavy equipment with bulldozers and putting jumps and turns and everything else. They bring in their neighbors and such like in there, but during those 11 days, we listened to this for up to 8 hours a day. Supervisor Thomas has been out there. He's listened to it. He's heard it. I've also called your county code enforcement officer, Meinhardt, I believe is his name, and asked him to look into this about some code enforcement. I want to give the Sheriff's Department some teeth in this. I've talked to Sergeant Everhart. I've talked to every deputy out there. I've talked to Highway Patrol, and it boils down to you guys doing something about this. We need a noise ordinance. Usually there's 3 bikes out there. These are in the 250 class bikes. These are professional bikes that are used on parks for people that ride for competition. They have no legal mufflers on them. Most of the time these mufflers are chopped off so they're not spark arresters on them, so they're illegal as well as that. But sometimes after school, it's every holiday, it's going to be during the summer. When, in the summertime, when the wind's blowing, our house turns into a red dust bowl. Our vehicles go from blue and black to red. My boat turns into red. Our house turns into red. And it's all day and it's all night, and sometimes even 30 minutes after sunset. It's even started as early as 6 a.m. This has gone on for 3 years. For 3 years, I've sat there and endured this. If you had to listen to this for 3 solid years, 250 feet or approximately from your front door, how would you feel about that? If you have interest in this county and you say to yourself, well, if I get a noise ordinance, then all the people that come in and rent my property are going to make a lot of noise, and then they're going to get run off and they're going to get cited and I'm going to lose business. Well, think about it this way. We pay taxes in this county on a regular basis. People that come here to just vacation for the weekend and become a nuisance are here today and gone tomorrow. The problem exists and lingers on. If we were going to be able to stay in this county and live in this county and wake up and not be terrorized every day of your life, we need to give the Sheriff's Department an ordinance. Give them something with teeth in it. Let's put some fines in there that make sense. If you fine someone $100 for the first offense, for a weekend party or one day of riding your motorcycles out there, those people are going to pay that fines. It's going to be worth it to them. So put some teeth into the fines. Give them $500 fines for a first offense. Make it a misdemeanor. Let's just not make this some infraction. Let's put it where they actually have time to go to jail and think about this. Maybe that sounds harsh to you, but spend some time living at our property. Talk to Mr. Thomas and ask him what it was like to be out there. It's absolutely insane. We talked to the neighbors, and the reply from the wife was, if you want to fight, you got one. F you, go back to your own property, mind your own business. If you don't like it, move. We have sunk every single dime we have into moving up here out of Modesto and the valley. We brought our horses up here, we put a stable home in, we take care of the property, and we're conservationists as far as the land and the property. These people did not have this track in when we bought the property, nor did they have it in when we did development on our land, put our home and our barn in there. After we had been there for 2 years, then they put the track in. They didn't come to anybody and say, hey, what do you think about us putting a track in for our kids? My suggestion was, why don't you put it in the back area, the south end of your property, where it doesn't borderline Surrey Avenue. There are a lot of people in the neighborhood that would like to speak up. Most of them are scared to death. This family terrorizes the neighborhood and basically threatens people that if you say anything or if you do anything, that we will get even with you. Our trees have been vandalized and cut down. Our property has been vandalized. We've been threatened over and over and over with violence. I'm personally sick of it. I've had it up to here. The next time I call the sheriff, it's going to be because I'm in a fight with that person across the street. I'm sick of it. 3 years is enough. My patience is extended beyond belief. You've got to come out here and listen to this and do something about this. I've been extremely patient. The Sheriff's Department is just begging to have somebody put some teeth to this and give them a law that they can enforce.
Yes, and I'm taking that as a positive thing, and so I'm prepared to step forward.
Well, we have a very light agenda today. As a matter of fact, I don't think we have anything on the action items or anything after this, so we have some time to fill before 9:30. And I saw you had 32 years of experience. Can you give us a rundown, year by year, of the whole 32 years?
I'm not going to plead age as a reason why I can't do it year by year. But I have been involved in healthcare, starting working at UCLA Medical Center as a child development specialist. I actually worked on the inpatient floor for pediatrics and did pre-op teaching and assessment as part of a multidisciplinary team. Have been in public health actually since October 18th, 1982 formally, wow. And have worked in every area of public health. And public health is such a great field because you do so many different things. So it's been a wonderful opportunity. I worked in San Bernardino County for the health department and ended up as being their administrative chief. It was a large department, a complex county with law.
Hide their hands by not having any law. They want to enforce the law. You need to have a law. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr.
My name is Evelyn McCleskey, and I live in Diamond 20 in Copper. When we first moved in, we put in a large barn because we breed horses, and our idea was to board outsiders' horses. When I called the county, they said it's a residential area, you cannot board horses, so I don't. But I don't understand this situation because my horses make no noise. They do nothing that is bad on the land or bad on the neighborhood. And yet this dirt bike track, which is the size of a commercial track, totally disrupts the entire neighborhood. During Christmas, we listened to it 8 hours a day. It was like living in the middle of a tornado for 8 hours. Pretty soon you're so stressed out you can't concentrate on anything. You can't hear the TV. You can't talk on the phone. You can't even have a conversation in your own house. It's impossible. There's no dealing with the people that are doing it. I have heard members of the board say, you know, that if we have a noise ordinance, it's going to hurt the tourist traffic. But they're not paying my property taxes. I am. I have had people tell us, well, that's what they move up here for, so they can do whatever they want. Well, you know, I got news for you. This isn't the 1800s. This isn't the Wild West. Calaveras County needs to come in line with the other counties. We need a noise ordinance. We need one badly.
Thank you.
My name is Terry Baker, and I missed the last 8 meetings, so I would like to get credit for my 5 minutes.
I'm sorry, Mr. Baker, it's each meeting.
Okay.
You have 5 minutes.
All righty. Anyway, I was listening to what this gentleman had to say, and not only do we need a noise ordinance, but we have one, and it's a nuisance ordinance, and it's noise is included in it, and we actually got a conviction on it. But it was overturned by this gentleman here, Steve Walensky, by this gentleman here, Jim Jones, and our lovely Miss Morano, who already got canned. We had a conviction. It was overturned illegally. It was overturned to let these people continue to harass us. They had 30 roosters when they were convicted. 2 days after that, they talked to my supervisor, Mr. Weasel, and he told them that they didn't have to worry about it. He's going to take care of this. He's going to find a friend of the court, and I have the proof right here. Friend of the courts. Her conviction was denied by the appellate court, and it was denied by Judge Moini. I'd like to know how they went from 30 roosters to 150. In the last 2 years, all we've been doing is making complaint after complaint after complaint. And we're the ones who are the bad guys because we just keep complaining. Now, the next thing I'd like to talk about is the noise ordinance. I was reading the paper today, not the noise ordinance, the public records inspection. I was here on October 27th, and I asked to see the public records information from animal control, and they refused to. I'm still waiting. They've refused it. Last week, I went to the Sheriff's Department. I talked to Debbie Parsons, and haven't heard back from her. Last Friday, I went to the animal control, and two deputies showed up and basically told me to leave. So, I don't know what else to do, but we do have a conviction on this woman, and if you can show me that this conviction still doesn't stand, she's been in violation for 800 days, and she's been convicted. It doesn't matter, sir. If you get a conviction, they're going to overturn it illegally. And Mr. Walensky, I'd like for you to respond to that, please. Thank you.
Mr. Walensky is not going to respond, Mr. Baker. I'm running this meeting. If you would like to talk to Mr. Walensky after the meeting, you can do that.
Then I would like you to respond to it, Mrs.
I
Calvin.
am not. This is your time to talk.
Okay, well, then I'm going to keep going.
You have 2 minutes.
Okay. I'd like Mr. Jones to tell me how he can write a letter to the people who have been convicted so they can show it to all the deputies that go out there with our complaints and say, here, this is what Mr. Jones says. We don't have to do what the court tells us to do. Who is Mr. Jonestown anyway? Where does he come from? Does he run this county?
Keep going, Mr. Baker.
How much more time do I have?
You have a minute and a half.
Okay, well, I'm going to read a few things to the public here.
That's fine.
It says, first of all, this is from Blair White. How Blair White got involved in this case, I have no idea. But that is a conflict of interest, along with the aiding and abetting a criminal, and along with interfering with a criminal prosecution. Now, these people have only been cited for an infraction. We got felonies here, defending these people. Who's going to do something about that? Anybody? Now, here's where it starts. Mrs. Redmond was convicted. Does that say Mrs. Redmond? It says David and Carolyn Redmond.
Mr. Baker, you addressed your comments to us, not
I was
the
just getting a
audience.
confirmation. Here, I'll come.
We don't need his confirmation. Mr. Baker, would you please go back to the podium if you would like to address the board? You have 30 seconds.
I'm done.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Good morning. My name is Bonnie Newman. I'm from Double Springs. And today I'm going to talk a little bit about an animal that I love, and it's cats. Some people are dog animals. I happen to be a cat animal. I mean, a cat lover. Okay. I think I was a cat once, and I might be again. Anyway, my best friend's always been a cat. The cat I have right now is 16 years old. His name is Blazing Silver, and he's majestic. I keep him in the house now because I want him to last a long time. He got in a fight with a fox last summer and put a hole in his ear. Cats are really fascinating creatures. They keep themselves impeccably clean. They're always licking themselves and cleaning themselves, and they do something else that's really unique, too. They keep themselves really clean when they go to the bathroom. They use a cat box. If they go outside, they do the same thing. They dig a little hole, they make a little poop, and then they cover it up. And then they go back and smell it, and if it still stinks, they cover it up again.
Ms. Newman, your point
Yes?
is?
Well, my point is sometimes human behavior is a lot like animals. I read the Human Resource Council. Sometimes there was a tendency to circle the wagons and protect somebody. Sometimes there was a tendency to throw someone out under the bus and let them get run over. Sometimes in an agency, people will cover things up. Not just an agency, but maybe even the Board of Supervisors, you might want to cover things up. For instance, if we were to maybe ask someone in the welfare department if anything stinks over there, they would probably cover it up or go like this. Well, I can smell the public authority. It's been stinking for a long time. When you ask somebody from the welfare department to look into the public authority, I think chances are they will probably cover something up or hold their nose. That's all I have to say right now.
Thank you. Does anyone else have something they'd like to address? It's got to be the water.
My name is Darren Spellman. I live in Rancho Calaveras. I'm currently running for the District 5 supervisor seat. And I have some people that live down the street from me that have motorbikes. I think the only ones that ride the bikes on there is their son. So it's maybe just one bike and hear him once in a while. But I mean, it's usually on a Saturday morning or something, which doesn't bother me too much because it doesn't happen very often. But just having lived in that peaceful, tranquil environment where I'm at, where most people have several acres around me, it's fairly quiet except for crickets and frogs at night. So just that one bike that I hear every once in a while does get on my nerves, but I don't say anything to them because it's not all the time, and I understand they have a right to enjoy their property. But the story that this gentleman just told is absolutely mind-boggling to me. I can't even imagine what it would be like to live under those circumstances. And for him to say that he's been attempting to...
varying health needs. Went to San Joaquin because I wanted to move out of the Inland Empire, and moved up here and purchased a home in Rancho Calaveras in Calaveras County, but was working in Stockton for San Joaquin. And then in 2003, actually a friend told me, hey Colleen, there's an opening for the public health director in Calaveras County. Do you think you'd be interested? And of course the idea of working in the county in which I lived was very appealing to me. And so I was fortunate to be selected. Obviously I was fortunate to work with Jeannie, and have enjoyed all of it in Calaveras County. I find the challenges in a small county very different. It's like when you have a small budget, it's actually harder to manage than when you have a large resource pool to draw from in the larger counties. In the time that I've been covering since Jeannie assumed the interim CAO position in November, I found behavioral health to be of great interest. It's a new area for me. It's very interesting to see how it's evolved differently from the physical health side. And it's an opportunity, I think, for more integration and partnership, really, on behalf of residents. So if the board approves it, I would thank you, because it's an opportunity to continue my service and work with all of you, community members, and the county administrative office. That's not half an hour.
Have something changed with this for the last 3 years, and nothing's happened so far. In that there's been threats and other things done is just incomprehensible. I would ask that this board, after hearing this man's story, look into what can be done about this. Apparently there's a law in the books, so I'll have to take a look at it. But I really feel for this man, and I hope that you all take that into consideration. And in my story as well, I understand I have somebody down the street from me, but it's just one kid who rides it once in a while. And I can't imagine, multiple bikes, at the number of hours that these guys are doing it, during the whole Christmas break would be just crazy. So I realize people have a right to use the property, but there also needs to be ordinances, and they need to be enforced. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Joe Kelly. Thank you, Supervisors Thomas and Tofinelli, for attending the FEMA meetings last year. August 19, 2008, the board passed and adopted Chapter 15.06, the Flood Damage Prevention Ordinance. Findings of facts in this statement, in this document, the cumulative effect of obstruction in areas of special flood hazards, which increase flood heights and velocities, also contribute to the flood loss. This is also to promote the public health, safety, and general welfare, and minimize public-private losses due to flood conditions in specific areas by legally enforceable regulations and applied uniformly throughout the community. Ensure that potential buyers are notified that property is in an area of special flood hazard. That's a tough one. Ensure that those who occupy the areas of special flood hazard assume responsibility for their actions. There's also a designation of a floodplain administrator. The Director of Community Development is appointed to administer, implement, and enforce this chapter by granting or denying development permits in accord with this provision. Board members, you need to appoint a floodplain administrator. CDA is gone. We're without. A prior chapter, basis for establishing the areas of special flood hazard, you adopted by reference and declared to be part of this chapter the flood insurance study for Calaveras County unincorporated areas dated September 5th, 1990. Page 4 of the flood insurance study states 2.3, principal flood problems, flooding occurs in the county from periods of heavy rainfall or rapid snow melt. Also on that same page, is there are no recorded flood problems in Calaveras County. Now, I find that truly from up till 1990 that there were none, because I know there were, but they weren't recorded in the county. Page 8 of this study states, the hydraulic analysis for this study were based on unobstructed flow. Nassau Creek has flooded since 1986, not before. A without permit 40-acre seasonal water retention facility, a dam, was constructed with a without permit raised roadbed with bridge abutments for a Nassau Creek crossing. In a California State Water Complaint Division has been out, done a study on it, and has actually abandoned the project after they made threats to the owners of the properties. They, by law, since 1914, have been the water agency and those responsible. Dam safety's been out to this project. It's not within their realm, but they have told the people, don't mess with this thing. If you go to do any modifications, you have to contact us. There's about 6 agencies that would be involved in permitting processes. State Water told me that for those people to attempt to get a permit for this thing would run about $250,000 at this time. I've investigated this to look for demolition and reclamation of this site, and I'm looking at a minimum $250,000 to $500,000. I'm also awaiting notification from FEMA from the last meeting as to their arrival of their survey team, which was promised during the last FEMA meeting, because they came in and did something that they shouldn't have done. They posted this thing onto a map. They're going to put a floodplain on that and affect that creek area. And I look at it as an illegal action because it is an obstruction. It has 2 obstructions, the dam and a secondary obstruction of Lobo Lane, which in the high flood areas, Lobo Lane, the water will actually come up and cross over Lobo Lane 4 foot higher because it goes above their little railing that they have there, their fencing. This comes out and does terrific damage. I had a map done of my property.
Mr. Kelly, you have 30 seconds.
Thank you. I have 20 acres of Ag A1 property. 15 acres of it is subject to flooding. I request that you, the board members, come out, take a look at it, or appoint one member with the new floodplain administrator to come out and investigate what's going on. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hi, Ed Pattison, Water Resource Manager for CCWD, and I thought I had a colorful life at CCWD, but this morning makes me think I live in grays and whites over there. I'm here to talk about the Cosgrove Creek Flood Management Project. It's something that's of high priority currently because of the federal year appropriations. Requests are due this Friday, February 5th, and the reason I'm here is that CCWD began this Cosgrove Creek project in competing for federal funds to try to correct some of the flooding along that corridor since the early 2000s. In 2005, there was a planning study paid for by the Corps at CCWD's request that did a planning study for $100,000. The feds found a federal interest because of the flooding and the damage done in the area, and they moved on to feasibility with a 50-50 cost share. Currently, about $1 million has been appropriated for this feasibility study that's about midway through and is due to be done in October 2011. I'm here today because the county has taken the lead role in signing the local sponsor contract with the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers, and I serve as the technical lead with the county team to implement this as quickly as we possibly can in a cost-effective manner. So every year there's a federal appropriations request, and while this project has received about $1 million, it is still going to require additional federal funding and local funding to actually see it through the feasibility phase and then ultimately on to design and construction, because I'm confident the feds will find an interest in a flood management solution for the region. So I have handed out to the board secretary the federal appropriations request from Senator Feinstein's office, and I provided each of you a copy, but ultimately I believe it would be the CAO's office that would have staff complete this federal fiscal year appropriations request with appropriate contact information. About 90% of it I've completed it, but about 10% of it would be county specific, and I identify some of the revisions that need to be made. And then CCWD will also submit an appropriations request to Senator Feinstein as well. And then I've emailed this information to Supervisors Toffanelli and Thomas, and they're looking for letters of support. But the ongoing competition for funding in this nation is tough, and this fiscal appropriations request for 2010-2011 to continue to fund the Cosgrove Creek project, and you'll have CCWD support to see some form of implementation at some point. Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Thank
Ms.
you.
Boyce,
Thank you very much, Ed.
ball's in your court, it sounds like.
So support for the board to...
I'll meet with you after this afternoon.
Okay.
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 Does somebody else have something they'd like to address to the board, not on the agenda?
Mr. Segalia. Good morning.
Madam Chair, Supervisors, I'm Al Segala with the Calaveras County Taxpayer Association, and I have two items for you. One is a thank you to express our appreciation to our winner of our Excellence in Public Service Award, Marie Hoekstra, County Librarian. She received a plaque at our luncheon this last week, and it was a very, very good event. The other item is a survey that we did, and we have the results and also a letter to each of you, which we'll share, which we'll give you in a moment. Our association recently conducted a public opinion survey as part of our efforts to promote better government and wise use of our taxes. The online poll summary is attached to this letter that is going to you. This is not a scientific opinion poll and is nonpartisan. As of January 28th, we received 28 web responses and 5 by mail. We were hoping to receive thousands of responses, but such is not the case. There were 20. We placed a quarter-page ads in the Calaveras Enterprise and the Union Democrat listing our 20 survey questions developed to cover some of what we feel are the most pressing local, state, and federal issues.
That's fine, thank you.
Great.
Very good.
Mr. Walensky.
Thank you, Gary.
Often when you have a person of Jeannie's caliber leave a department, it leaves a gaping hole. And one of the most important aspects of leadership is sometimes forgotten, which is being able to work with people who are of similar caliber, of the same weight and measure of the people that are your deputies and others in the line. I think it's both a credit to Jeannie for finding such quality and delegating the opportunities so that this is a seamless transfer and one that really is a credit to both of you. And I want to thank you, because it's always kind of scary to pull from a department and see what might be left. In this case, not at all. And
Since we're finalized after sharing with about 170 of our members and friends of our group, and we had quite a few revisions. The participants were directed to our website to take the poll, and they could clip and mail the ad to us. We used SurveyMonkey to manage the online poll. Now, we used SurveyMonkey, but we weren't really monkeying around. We promised to share the results of the survey with our elected leaders and candidates, and I think we have a candidate here tonight, so hopefully he'll get a copy of this. The results of the survey on our local issues, and the question was, first question was, do you favor adding protection of property rights in the county mission statement and general plan? The response was yes, 89%, no, 10%, and there was no opinions. Question 2, do you favor ending the county building ban on parcels served by non-surveyed easements? This was quite a contentious issue a while back. The answer was yes, 67%, no, 10%, no opinion, 21%. This kind of indicates that not very much public knowledge about that issue. Question 3. Do you favor ending the county building ban on parcels, building ban of barns on parcels without a residence? The response was 85% yes, no 10%, and no opinion 3.6%. This one apparently people understood that issue a little bit better. Do you favor, the next question, do you favor automatic conditional approval of your building application when government regulators are unable to respond in a reasonable time? The answers were yes, 78%, no, 14%, no opinion, 7%. Next one, do you favor increasing the transit occupancy tax? The response was yes, 37%, no, 55%, and no opinion, 7%. On that, the question talked about transit occupancy tax. The chamber people and the visit people say that if the question were worded differently, like bedroom tax or something like that, there probably would be a higher percentage of people that would say yes, they're in favor of increasing it. Question 6, do you favor the county versus Bear Valley lawsuit? The answer was yes, 1, or 3.6%, no, 46%, and no opinion, 50%. Okay, that seems to indicate that there's a lot of confusion about what that is. Otherwise, there wouldn't be so many people that would have no opinion on it. Number 7, do you favor re-electing those? Okay, now we're moving into state issues. Do you favor re-electing those who voted for the $16 billion tax increase? The answer was yes, 3.8%, no, 96%, no opinion, 0. Okay, we got a clear, kind of a clear mandate, at least for the sampling that we did. Do you favor repeal of AB 32, the Global Warming Solutions Act? Yes, 77%, no, 14%, no opinion, 7%. Do you favor reduction in size of state government? Yes, 96%, no, 3.7%, no opinion, 0. Number 10, do you favor the state selling property and businesses it does not need? Yes, 88%, no, 11%, no opinion, 0. Do you favor a part-time legislature? Yes, 63%, no, 25%, no opinion, 11%. Do you favor public employee written consent before union dues could be used for political purposes? Yes, 96%, no, 0.
Mr. Segal, you have 30 seconds.
My time's up?
30 seconds, I'll give you 30
Okay, thank you. No opinion, 3.7%. Do you favor full auditing of the Federal Reserve? Yes, 92%, no, 3.7%. No opinion, 3.7%. Do you favor taxpayer funding of scientific studies to be performed with an outcome bias? Now listen to the words of that one. Response was yes, no, yes was 81%, no 18%, no opinion 0. Now I originally had that worded, okay, 10 seconds. I originally had that worded, do you favor public funding of bogus scientific studies? And that question was totally shot down by all the people who responded, so we changed it to its present format. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Mr. Segale.
Thank you, Al, for that information.
Yes, Bonnie Newman from Double Springs. The paper that I just handed out to y'all, this is follow-up from last summer when healthcare workers were looking at getting their wages cut. We have a response from the union which indicates that Calaveras County Public Authority was not very helpful, and in fact, Calaveras County was the only county in the state of California that the union had to file a grievance against. That means every other county went along with what was happening except Calaveras County. In fact, they stuck it out till the very end, till the very last minute, and caused a grievance to be filed. Now that means that our county council has to respond in some way when the union files a grievance?
It's your turn to talk, Ms. Newman.
Okay.
You've already done 2.5 minutes, so you have another minute and a half.
Okay, my question would be then, how much money did Calaveras County taxpayers have to pay to fight the union's grievance when the public authority failed to back down? As Calaveras County is the only county that had this kind of action, I'm really concerned. Where are they taking their directives from? Are they getting them from the state? Are they getting them locally? Something's really wrong here, and I really want to know how much my tax dollars had to pay to fight this grievance that was totally unnecessary. And I guess I would find that out from county council at some point.
If you're requesting a Public Records Act, is that what you're requesting? Thank you.
That would be on.
You've already met with the Chief Administrative Officer. You've
Yes.
met with the department head. They spent quite a bit of time with you going over the issues.
We got
If this is something else that you would like to know, I will ask the CAO to get you the information.
Yes, it is something.
Okay,
And
thank
as we
you.
spoke, we only got a third of my issues addressed, so that's why I'm still
Okay,
speaking.
if your concerns were not addressed, then we can set up another meeting. But
Well,
this
we had
goes on
intended to.
over and over. It's been going on for a year. The whole purpose of your meeting with the CAO and the head of the agency was to address your concerns, some of which are quite valid.
Yes.
So if you need another meeting, we will set that up.
For a certain specific, like noise or something, then the 15 minutes that's allotted to that, sometimes there's no counter time to it. So it seems like the board should go, okay, we'll give 10 minutes to the first one, we're going to reserve 5 minutes for a rebuttal, and if there's no rebuttal, then let that 5 minutes go to that group, because sometimes we sit here and just listen to the same. Where one person, like if I could come up and say, like I'm against the general plan for Valley Springs, that seems to be sufficient without 40 people saying that. And it seems like we should try to make sure both sides are heard. Thank you.
Thank you. If you recollect last week, the comments on Valley Springs went on for about an hour. There was no 15-minute limit. There was a 5-minute limit. I felt that people needed to be heard on that topic. So it is the board's discretion. what we'd like is not to hear the same thing. You know, why someone doesn't want the Valley Springs or does want it, they all have that opportunity.
Really welcome you to this position.
We do.
And with that, I don't know, Gary, I'll second if you'd like to make
I would
a
happily-
motion to approve.
She lives in my district.
Well, in that case, we will bequeath it to you.
Absolutely.
All right, standing on that protocol, I am very pleased to move that we accept Colleen Tracy for this position.
And Gary and I will both second.
We'll
All
second.
right, all right.
Let the record note.
We all
in-
second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Passes on a 5-0. Congratulations. We look forward to
Thank you very
working
much.
with you. The board stands in recess for about 3 minutes. To public comments. Mr. Tryon, Ms. Boyce, please.
Yes,
Thank
Madam
you.
Chair, what is it I may help you with?
Zip it here. I'd like to move to public comments. These are items to be addressed that are not on the agenda, and it's a well taken. Thank you.
Good morning, Madam Chairman, members of the board. This week is another great
And you
example.
are?
Oh, sometimes I forget who I, never mind. Darrell Rusk, 101 Melcher Lane, Valley Springs mailing address, Burson physical address, 95252 and 7720225. I remembered all of it pretty good, huh?
I forgot what you were going to talk about.
My only comment is very brief. Today has provided another great example of why I admire your patience, but I do not admire your jobs. I couldn't do it. I couldn't do your jobs at all. But you do it beautifully. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Rusk. Is there someone else who would like to address a non-agenda topic? Okay. I'd like to move to board reports or comments. Mr. Tryon.
I'll be at a couple social events that I anticipate other board members will probably be present. One's the annual dinner for the Calaveras County Chamber of Commerce. It's Thursday night, if I'm correct this time. I was correct on the day of the week last week.
Yes, you were, Mr. Tryon.
And the Ag Dinner at Frogtown on Saturday night.
Mr. Walensky.
Today at 4 o'clock, I have the Mental Health Board meeting. I will be attending the school board meeting for the CUSD, which will be deciding, making their final decision on the fate of Railroad Flat School. I will be at the chamber meeting, or the luncheon on Thursday.
It's 5 minutes per person, and Mr. Thomas gave me his timer, so I will be using it. Thank you. Yes, please identify yourself.
Yes, good morning. My name is Roger Stugelmeyer, and I've owned property in Rancho since 1971. And I'm here to protect the Rancho Calaveras community plan called the Special Plan. Why does Valley Springs think it has the right to encroach on neighboring community plans? Valley Springs Community Plan wants to provide high-density development. There are nearly 200 acres between Valley Springs and Rancho Calaveras, zoned commercially. Rancho Calaveras does not want to be part of and pay for problems of Valley Springs and high-density development. A straw poll vote was taken in the Rancho Calaveras clubhouse during the last few weeks. Over 570 Rancho Calaveras property owners participated. 97% of the vote wanted to be excluded from the Valley Springs Community Plan. To reiterate, Rancho Calaveras is a planned development by itself, approved by you, the county supervisors. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good morning. My name is Mike Wietrich. I'm a resident of District 1 and a property owner in District 5.
Mike, excuse me, could you spell your last name, please?
Wietrick.
Thank you.
I'm here today at the request of a couple hundred residents from Rancho Calaveras and for myself and my family. I would like to address the misconception that the Calaveras Council of Governments is working on an update of the Greater Valley Springs Community Plan. There is no such plan to be updated. There is simply a Valley Springs plan right now. They are attempting to write a completely new plan and include all the surrounding areas into that plan. What I don't understand is why the Calaveras Council of Governments that was formed to take care of transportation is involved in community planning to begin with. Their only involvement should be to help direct the traffic impact of any such plan and for guidance in that area. Being an elected official myself that has had to go to a mandatory class on the Brown Act, I also don't understand how two of the members of this board can sit on the Calaveras Council of Governments board for which they are paid and it not be a conflict of interest. Anyways, I was here a couple of weeks ago and expressed my disappointment with my two supervisors and informed all of you that there had been a legitimate vote taken in Rancho and 228 people wanted to be left out of this new plan and only 4 wanted to be included. It was an oversight on my part to not leave you those copies of those ballots. Since then, we have had another open house and handed out Calaveras Council of Governments literature. We now have 573 residents of Rancho Calaveras who want to be left out of this new plan and only 21 who want to be included in it. Here are those ballots. I'm submitting those today. 573 that don't want to be a part of it, 21 that do. And you'll notice that every one of them has a name, an address.
I also will be a 4-H judge at Jenny Lind Elementary on Saturday.
Mr. Tuffanelli?
I will be at the chamber dinner on Thursday. And I want to bring up, and I'll also be at the Jenny Lind School on Saturday. I want to bring up, though, next Wednesday, a week from tomorrow, the Mountain Valley Emergency Services Board will conduct their meeting in Amador County at the Amador County Supervisors Chambers. On that agenda is the presentation from the MSOC committee,
MSOC,
Emergency Services Oversight Committee.
Thank you.
Meeting that was conducted last week or 2 weeks ago to the board that were presenting those findings and what the public comments were said regarding the ambulance service here in Calaveras County. So if you're interested and you want to show up and have public comments on that, please show up. It's at 10 a.m. on Wednesday, February 10th.
And I don't want to reiterate what Tom stated last week. One, we don't have the time, and two, it's pretty much the same. But what we're trying to do as counties is get the legislature more involved. We think that the legislature has an inability to understand or acknowledge the physical crisis at the local level. And so you can't any longer lobby the legislature. I don't care what agency or group you represent like you did before. And an example was I met with the Ag and Natural Resources Committee for the state counties on the Williamson Act, something where this county's has said that we will continue to accept contracts. And we talked with the Farm Bureau, and collectively the amount of subvention funds that comes to counties for Williamson Act is just budget dust. So nobody wants to listen to the fact that we're keeping open space, that we're keeping ag in ag, and we're helping them out. It doesn't matter. We can no longer get an ear on that topic, and that's sort of been fairly sacrosanct topic, and it's, as you know, last year we received no money, and this coming year we will not. So just some of the quick key things that we're going to focus on is encouraging maximizing of federal funds. For example, if you have a program that has an 80% federal match, but you're going to cut 20% of it because of the state, like TANF would be, and the impact to CalWorks, then we're losing 80% funding for a 20% cut. I mean, and that's just one example. We're asking them to avoid new mandates and, you know, lots of luck, and suspend the mandates that are currently awaiting adjudication. And we as a county are not imposing anything. We think the state should not be either. We're asking them to right-size state government. That doesn't mean cancel it. That means look at the programs that they're doing. Where does the responsibility lie? Align responsibility with the authority with where the work's being done, which in California is being done at the county level. And we're asking them to eliminate and to consolidate programs. This is something that we're doing in Calaveras County. Other counties are doing it. We think that the state should be doing it too. And of course, we're looking for broad government reforms on the state level. So, I mean, that's just kind of a quick recap. The same monies that are not going to be available to counties, the same impact is pretty much what Tom addressed last week. So everyone's keeping on top of it. All of you can read the papers every day. You probably know just as much as we do on it. And our CAO is very involved in the process. Ms. Boyce.
Before we go there, can I bring up one other thing?
Yeah.
I'm not aware that we have responded to Chairman McCartney of CCWD's letter about the proposed joint meeting on the 25th, Thursday the 25th.
It hasn't been brought to us yet. I think Ms. Boyce is going to talk about that.
Oh, okay. All right. Thank you. Go ahead.
I was just going to follow up on Marita's comments on the state budget debacle. There isn't any new news. The Senate Budget Committees are holding hearings on issues. The Assembly side has just begun to hold hearings. They've held one as of last week. The Assembly leadership has changed, and as leadership changes, it takes a while for committee chairmanships and positions to be finalized. So I think we haven't seen any true movement in terms of the governor's special session. So it's going to be a tough couple months here as we wait to see where the other shoe falls with the state funding and how that impacts local government. And I think we all need to urge our state legislators that the longer they hold out and don't take action, the harder it hits us at the local level. And so all of those of you in the audience, if you could please urge your state legislators to take action on the budget. We know it's not going to be easy decisions that need to be made, but the sooner they make the decisions, we can make a plan locally to lessen the impact here. So that's what we've heard at our county administrator session last week as well. Under correspondence, we did receive a letter from CCWD. They are asking the board to please join them in a joint meeting to discuss federal legislative activities as a cost-saving measure to secure federal funding for much-needed infrastructure projects in Calaveras County. They're asking you to join them on February the 25th at 10 a.m. at the CCWD boardroom in San Andreas. And I have a letter here, and all of you should have received a copy in your correspondence. So if you'd like.
That will be a public meeting.
Correct. So, the wish of the board.
Okay. That's a Thursday, you said?
That's a Thursday. Thursday, February 25th at 10 a.m.
Do any of the board members have any problem with that? Okay, so be it, Jenny.
Okay, I'll let them know
It's
that,
on my calendar.
okay. I'll be in touch, and I will talk to Larry Diamond, make sure they
I'd like to
understand.
know what the subject
It'd be
is.
nice to have
Okay, you have,
They're looking
yeah, you have a
for.
copy of the letter?
Okay.
And I'll
Thank
ask
you.
them if they have an agenda we can share with
Okay,
you.
thank you.
Tom will mentor you.
Mr. Jones?
Oh, nothing.
Okay, we're going to take a 5-minute recess before we go into our study session. Thank you. Jeannie? To have a status report on the general plan. The protocol will be that I will turn the meeting over to Mr. Wright, who's our planning director. He will introduce the consultants on the project. I will then bring it back to the board for any questions or comments. I will then open it to the public for any questions or comments. Any questions you have will be answered after everyone has had a chance to speak. So instead of do QA, we will do it at the very end. Okay, and it will be 5 minutes per person, and since we only have one topic, there's no time frame on that. Mr. White.
Thank you, Madam Chair. As you said, this is a study session that is essentially a status report for the general plan update. But before I turn this over to our consultants, I'd like to take this opportunity to introduce a new and important member of our general plan update team. As you know, we've had a vacant general plan coordinator position on the books since I've arrived, and it was only more recently they were able to fill that position. We recruited over the past 3 months, and we have hired a new coordinator. Her name is Brenda Gilardi. She is here with us today. She just started yesterday. Good timing. I think she's going to be a great addition to our team, part of the success of this update moving forward. So, Brenda.
Thank you very much. Good morning. I can't tell you how excited I am to be here. And I'm looking forward to being part of this great team that's going to bring the general plan and the other plans to fruition. Just by way of a little background, I am an insider in the fact that I'm a fifth-generation Californian, and my relatives were actually part of the Donner Party. So I have very long roots in California. And I have just established roots here in Calaveras County, which is now my new home. I moved up from the Bay Area, as George said, recently on Friday. So just a little bit about my background. I started my career in planning in 1980 as an environmental planner. So I'm very well steeped in CEQA and all of the environmental issues that will need to be addressed also as part of this general plan update. I also have had my own consulting business since 1984. I've worked for a variety of different jurisdictions throughout the Bay Area. And so I worked both for private sector clients and also for public agencies. I formerly was a principal planner for City of Benicia for 7 years, so I have worked in the public sector system, and I understand the various challenges with that system. I have personally authored 3 general plans throughout my career, 2 of them for smaller communities. Some of you may be familiar with the City of Sonoma and the City of Benicia. So I know the general plan process from a very hands-on perspective. Larry and I have been colleagues. We haven't worked directly together, but we certainly have known and kept abreast of each other throughout our various careers. And let's see, also I mentioned I have worked for private sector clients doing entitlement processing or development processing for them. So I also very clearly understand the needs and desires of private landowners. So I am definitely ready to take on this challenge, and I will be hitting the ground running, as hopefully this little thumbnail sketch of my background indicates. And I really look forward to working with you and the community in bringing the general plan to a successful and timely completion.
Thank you, Ms.
That's all I have, Madam.
Okay, Mr. Thomas?
That's at the board chamber?
That's at the board chambers in Jackson.
Okay.
I have an address if you want. That's 810 Court Street in Jackson. It's right near the hospital, right next to the hospital. Right.
Okay, Madam Chair, before I give my report on board responsibilities, on the subject of correspondence, we have some good news this morning. I've asked Blaine Smith from the Sheriff's Boat Division to come in and talk about a letter that you got in your packet regarding the Poker Flat Homeowners Association has really done the community and the county a great service by offering the ability for Blaine to...
We look forward to working with you, as does the community.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Brenda, and I can tell you no one's happier to have you here than I am. At this point, I'd like to introduce two members of our consultant team. Larry Mintier, who's obviously one of the principals of Minter Harnish, who is our general plan consultant, and Rick Keller, who's been the project manager on the general plan update all along. So at this point, I'll turn it over to Larry.
Thank you, George. Madam Chair, members of the Board of Supervisors, it's a pleasure to be here to present this overview update of the general plan update process. I'm going to start by setting the stage, telling you where we've been, where we are in the process, and where we're headed. I'll talk about the larger general plan update program to begin with, and then talk about some very specific, more focused efforts that are part of the overall process, and then I'll turn it over to Rick Keller to talk about the current phase of the general plan, which is the alternatives phase. I've actually got a couple flow charts here to explain how this overall process works. Can we get a little more focus on this? I'm having trouble seeing it. There we go. Good, great.
I thought I needed glasses.
So I think that's good now. We started the general plan update program in 2007, and as you can see down to the right, we're going to be concluding the process in early 2011, presumably about this time next year. So most of in terms of the work to be done and all of the phases, we're sort of three-quarters of the way through the process here. After we initiated the process in 2007, we prepared the baseline report, which was an existing conditions report. And then after we did that and did some workshops, we developed the issues and options, issues, opportunities, and vision report. And at the same time as we worked with a new contract, we supplemented the baseline report with an economic development component, just existing conditions information. That set the stage for us moving into the alternatives report. And so following the alternatives report, then we'll get to the business of actually drafting the goals, policies, implementation measures that will make up the plan, and then drafting the EIR and taking that out to public review. Here's another variation on the schedule, again starting in 2007, and what you see added in here are some of the specialized, more focused efforts that I'll talk about in just a couple minutes. It's too hard to read them here. I'll explain them as we get into this next slide. But again, we're moving right now into we're pretty much finished with the technical work for the alternatives phase. The alternatives report will be published very soon, within a matter of actually days. Then we'll be doing a round of workshops. Rick will talk about that. At the conclusion of those workshops, it'll come back to the board, and then we'll get direction for actually drafting the plan. But at the same time, much work, as I'll explain in a minute, has already been done on individual elements. On the left-hand side of this chart are described the two documents that will ultimately make up the plan. The first is the background report. That's done. And that, again, is the existing conditions report. What's left to be done in terms of the formal plan that the board will adopt is the policy document. And again, we get down to work on that as soon as we finish the alternatives phase. There are several documents produced along the way that you won't adopt, but will be the basis for moving the process forward. The working draft vision statement and guiding principles, that was published in 2008. The issues and opportunities report published in 2008 as well in June. That came to the board, you reviewed that, you gave us direction. The current report, the alternative report, and then the environmental impact report. So we have those documents that make up the formal plan and those documents that are analytical and supporting documents for the main documents that make up the plan. In terms of workshops, we have, there are 4 rounds of workshops as part of the overall general plan update. We've already completed 2 rounds back in May and June of 2007. That was a kickoff round of workshops to introduce the update, to collect early input. Then we used the second round of workshops to focus on issues, opportunities, and vision. And of course, we learned there and incorporated into the reports that we've been using and presenting to you. Again, we're just getting ready to go on the road with this next round of workshops in March, and then we'll be back to the board. Next slide. Now, after this next round, we'll have yet one more round of community workshops, and we'll be doing that in the context of drafting the general plan, the policy report. And once we have the environmental impact report, we'll take that out to public hearings. There won't be another round of workshops, but there will be a series of public hearings before the Planning Commission and Board of Supervisors. Now, I said that there were actually 5 focused efforts that are part of this general plan update process. And the first is a water element, and the board approved the inclusion of a water element some time ago. This was in August 2008. And this water element planning group met in the fall through January to develop not only a baseline report or background report that we added into our background report, but goals and policies that will be incorporated into the new general plan, again, after staff and the consultants review it. So it may need some massaging, but we were involved in preparing that element, so it's in pretty good shape and should be easily incorporated into the plan. Next, agricultural element. You were presented a draft agriculture and forestry element that was about a year ago, and staff provided some comments on that early on, and we will be getting back to it as we get into the plan. We'll be going through that again, reviewing it very carefully, and incorporating it into the policy document. And it may require some massaging in the process, but the substance of it will be included in the general plan. The economic development element, again, this is something that the board is familiar with, having authorized our work and the separate effort on this. Our consultants, ADE, there are economists as part of the program, were actively involved in this effort all the way through. And in the course of this last year or so, there have been 2 different forums. One was a forum held back in 2008. It was actually called an Economic Summit. And between that first summit and then this Economic Forum in October 2009, a lot of work was done in terms of developing background information, a little bit to supplement what had already been done by our sub-consultant, and then there was a lot of work done on goals and policies, implementation measures, but that was in rawer form, and so our sub-consultants, ADE, have been working with that information, and that, of course, will be plugged into the general plan as well at the appropriate time. The fourth effort is the housing element. There's a separate set of requirements for the housing element. There's the state mandates. It has very specific deadlines for completion, and so we sort of pulled that off the main line of the general plan and accelerated that. And in November, the county submitted a draft of that element to the Department of Housing and Community Development for their mandatory review. And so we have gotten back comments from the state in the middle of January. We are currently working on that element to respond to those comments. We will be responding sometime early in February to the state with the expectation that they will send us a letter that says, basically, you're good. If you make those changes when you take it to the board, we will certify it. We'll also be having a stakeholders meeting later this February to talk about the county's responses to HCD's comments. So we're almost there on that. And the fifth effort involves the community plans. Part of our work program as a consultant and work program that of course county staff is involved in is to create a new structure.
Have the sheriff's boat stored in their facilities, or they're actually creating a facility for it, as I view it. But Blaine, would you please tell us all about that?
My name is Sergeant Smith with the Calaveras County Sheriff's Office. I'm currently in charge of the Marine Safety Division. We have 5 lakes that we actively patrol. Lake Tulloch is our smallest lake, but we have the most activity on that lake. Use per shoreline mile and everything else is greatly increased with all our residents. In times like we are now with short budgets, the ability to store a boat on a lake potentially increases our patrol time on the lake by 20%. The community of Poker Flat, their property owners association, offered this. We accepted, and it's awesome that the community is going to help out the Sheriff's Department in doing our job like they are at absolutely no cost. And it's actually going to save the Sheriff's Department more money back and forth towing the boats. So it's an outstanding opportunity, and hopefully it'll reflect in
community plans, where today the community plans are separate documents. They're almost like they're freestanding mini general plans. The work program that you approve has us taking those and actually incorporating them into the plan. They don't disappear. They get consolidated into a separate part of the plan. So they're literally under the same cover as the rest of the general plan, the countywide general plan. And so what we're doing in the process here is taking, well, I'll talk about this in a second, but the idea is to create a unified structure for those. So all the community plans follow the same outline, sort of table of contents. And so we're taking new and existing information concerning community plans, reformatting according to this new outline, and actually doing some editing where there's, right now, if you're familiar with the community plans, you know that there's a lot of redundancy. There are policies in the community plans that are really countywide policies, and they repeat policies that are other community plans. And so there's a lot of work that we've been able to do to just simplify them and streamline them while maintaining the essential content and thrust and spirit of those community plans. So there are 4 existing community plans that we've already worked over, and we've sent those off to staff for their review. The San Andreas and Moke Hill plans were in process, a lot of community input. We've taken those and put them into the new format and suggested some editing. So that's 6 of the community plans. We also have the District 2 community visions. We're working on those right now to sort of standardize the format for those. They're not community plans, they're something else, but they'll go into the same part of the general plan. And finally, we have the Copperopolis plan and the Valley Springs plan. We will be working on the Copperopolis plan next, and in the next week or 2, we'll be working on that. And then there's a whole separate set of issues concerning the Valley Springs plan, as you well know. And so we're not, the consulting team is not directly involved in trying to produce the Valley Springs plan. We're in conversation with the consultants that are working on that plan, but we're not working on it, and we're not scoped to really work on it other than some just basic coordination. So that's where we are in the overall general plan program, and I think we'll shift over to talk about the alternatives process.
Yeah, I'm Rick Keller, Interior Harnish, and we'll talk about the alternatives phase that we're getting close to wrapping up. And so I'll provide an overview first of what the alternatives phase is. And the alternatives phase is where the general plan update moves from the background information baseline report that we developed in phase 2, the issues and opportunities, guiding principles, vision statement that we developed in phases 3 and 4.
We'll just take a few, hold it. This is not being broadcast, is that what
That's what I'm told. It's broadcast, the mic's are on, but it's not being broadcast outside of the room.
Okay. We're going to...
I'm going to fix that.
Technical difficulties. Where's Howard when you need?
Oh, it's on. It's
I love the 21st century.
Hi, that's okay, Marcy, this is Judy, I'm in the boardroom, and we're having a problem, I guess our mics are on, but the board is not being broadcast out in the studio. Hi, we're in the study session, and the mic's are on, but somehow it's not coming through.
Okay, we're going back to the alternative phase overview.
Yes. And
Thank you.
I'm Rick Keller with Interior Harnish, and I'm going to provide an overview of the alternatives phase that we're getting close to the end of. So the alternatives phase is where the general plan update moves from the background information that we developed in the baseline report and the baseline report supplement in phase 2, the issues and opportunities report that we developed in phase 3, and then the vision and guiding principles that we developed in phase 4. So the alternatives phase is where we move from that background information and some of the broader visioning to an actual definable land use plan and policy direction. And the alternatives report, to summarize it in one sentence, presents a comparative evaluation of land use alternatives for Calaveras County to the general plan horizon year, which is 2035. And so I'm going to talk about the steps. And so a lot of this has been done behind the scenes since our last phase, and we're going public with the report shortly. But some of the steps that have been involved in developing the alternatives report are developing a unified set of land use designations. We're taking the existing land use designation system and updated that. We have developed a set of countywide growth projections for population, households, and employment, and then developing a set of land use alternatives. We've then modeled the alternatives to project growth in county by different sub-areas. Talk about that when we come back to the alternatives workshops. And then evaluating the land use alternatives. So We now have a draft that we're working on with county staff to finalize, to present to the public for the alternatives report. And I'll talk about the release for that. We will then be conducting a series of 6 community workshops, like we did for the first 2 sets of workshops. And then finally, we'll wrap up with 2 sets, at least, of joint Board of Supervisors and Planning Commission study sessions. So the schedule for the alternatives report. We are publishing the public review draft of the alternatives report in less than 2 weeks, is our schedule right now for mid-February this month. And then starting at the start of March, we'll be conducting a series of 6 workshops to get input from the community on the alternatives. And following those workshops, again, we have the 2 study sessions for the Planning Commission and the Board, in which you'll review the alternatives report. We'll provide summaries of all the input that we received in the community workshops, and there'll be an opportunity for further comments from the public. And at the end of that process, we are looking to the board to choose and select a preferred land use alternative that we will take moving forward to develop the goals and policies for the final general plan. So that's the alternatives phase update, and we provided the update for the rest of the general plan update. So, take some questions.
George, just go as I directed, okay. Do any of the board members have questions or comments they'd like to make at this time? I will come back to you later after public comments. Mr. Walensky.
I just have one question. The District 2 provided 8 what you're calling visions, but they actually vary considerably. 2 of them are strictly visions, Sheep Ranch and Paloma. Others, and all of them include maps with land use designations or density type comments. These are the product of a great deal of work. They are meant to be a guide for you in developing alternatives for those particular areas covered. I'm interested in how you will, for instance, I could imagine there being 3 alternatives for the county as a whole. But are you planning 3 alternatives for those communities that have worked very hard to reach consensus on one alternative that they have already selected in quite an inclusive process? I could imagine you taking us back to square one inadvertently and creating the kind of discussion that we see in some other towns.
The short answer is yes. We had the luxury of having those plans in advance, so we were able to factor those into the alternatives analysis that was already conducted. So what we're going to have is we're going to have one alternative that probably is kind of, for the lack of a better term, kind of business as usual, and then there's 2 other alternatives that talk about the overall county growth projections in a different development scenario, including the visions and the community plans that we've already received.
So those won't be included in all the visions, just in one?
I think generally speaking, just in one. Well, there's actually 2. There's 3 total alternatives. One is, like I say, kind of the straight line projection from where we are right now, and the other 2 are variations on a more intense development scenario in the future. And that includes the visions and community plans that we've already received.
More communities in Calvert County will form a partnership with the Sheriff's Department, and we can become more effective. Thank you for your time.
Thank you.
As the board will recall, for several sessions here in the last several years, we've had homeowners from particularly Poker Flat that have been bringing their concerns about the rowdiness that exists in that particular subdivision. My sincere belief is that with Blaine and his officers having a more of a visible presence in that subdivision, it'll help with the complaints that we get there. I'm hoping, Blaine, when I communicated with you about this, I was hoping that you'd make some stealth visits down there so that they won't know whether the boat's in or out of the barn, and it could really pay some very distinct benefit.
All right. I guess we'll see how it all pans out.
Yeah.
Okay.
Interesting. I have a comment, if I may,
Yes.
Madam Chair. I take exception to one of the comments that Mr. Mintier made, not in anything to the quality of work, but you basically said that you were not involved in the Valley Springs community plan. And I think you need to be intimately involved, as does planning staff, in the Valley Springs community plan. This board did not designate any authority to the Council of Governments to do the Valley Springs community plan. The Council of Governments, it's my understanding, basically did that unilaterally and on their own. In the final analysis, there won't be a community plan until or unless it's adopted by this Board of Supervisors, and I think it needs to be a county-generated project. I'm not at all against you talking to their consultant or looking at their work product and deciding what you believe you should recommend and those areas that you believe should not be recommended. But I'm very concerned about your comment that basically you're not even looking at it. And I think you and the planning staff very much needs to be looking at that product. And in the final analysis, it needs to be a county-generated product. And I think you should be looking at the COG report the same as you would look at the myvalleysprings.com input or any other group or individual input, but not as a final product. I think that needs to come internally from both the planning staff and from you in the same context that you are addressing any other community plans. So I just have that's my comment. Thank you.
Right, and I'll let Larry respond to that if he wants to, but I think it's exactly right. The current contract does scope out work tasks relative to all the community plans. The difficulty with Valley Springs is we don't have a deliverable. We do not have a work product at this time to look at. That's an iterative process that's ongoing. So I think what Larry is probably meant to say was, we're involved to the extent that we can be right now, but still waiting to fulfill the role that has been scoped out, which is to get the deliverable, which is the community plan itself, and do what we've done with all of the other community plans thus far. And hopefully, we can do that in the time frame allotted. Obviously, we're in the alternatives phase right now. Time is growing very short. So I don't know if Larry can get an additional comment.
Supervisor, I think you and George have the same understanding, and so do we, that, and we've been clear about that from the very beginning, that ultimately the board has to approve the Valley Springs community plan. The community can't adopt it unilaterally. And all I was suggesting is that we've been monitoring it. We've attended some meetings, but since they haven't produced a draft that we can work with, we just haven't really tried to interject ourselves into the process to shape it. We're just waiting for that process to conclude, and then we would take the output from that. So our coordination has been...
Well, I'm not asking you to interject yourself. I don't think you should. I think you should view it the same as myvalleysprings.com or any other group or individual input. Just accept it as input when it's presented, but it needs to be a county product.
We agree, and we understand it the same way that you just outlined it.
Thank you.
Okay. Are there any other questions?
Mr. Mintier, this may sound a little bit like a broken record, but I have been, as you know, very much involved in the Copperopolis Community Plan work for the last 9 or 10 years. My fervent hope is that I will recognize that plan when you get through with your work. It would be very disconcerting to me and to the hundreds of people that took part in that effort, both with and without county assistance. If we don't end up at the end of this process with the densities that we had put into the plan that we very much want to see and build out, our horizon, as you put it, was very much at that threshold of 2035 and beyond. We started off with a general plan land use and density assumption that would have produced 100,000 people living in Copperopolis over time. None of us on the committee want that to happen. So I'm really putting on notice that I'm going to hold your feet to the fire that we need to have whatever shape that this thing takes. We're wanting to see what we brought to you implemented within the general plan.
Supervisor, we're working very hard to try to keep the substance of those plans intact as we do our work. Now, I should clarify that the first reflection of those community plans, whether they're the existing community plans or the ones that are in process in Coppers, is one that's been moving, a moving target until recently. That will get reflected in the land use alternatives. When that, you'll see it in the report, and you'll be able to look at the land use diagrams and 3 alternatives and make judgments about how close the land use, any one of the alternatives, is to the work that's already been done there. Relative to the goals and policies, the vision statements, the goals and policies, that is following a slightly different track, and that'll be plugged in to the policy document a little later. We're actually not going to be presenting the goals and policies, the verbiage, until we get through this the land use element piece of this alternatives process. So I just wanted to clarify that it's following 2 tracks. If you have a community plan, whether it's in draft form or an older one, it has policies, it has a map. The map work is getting incorporated in the alternatives. The goals and policies follows a different track into the general plan.
So some future entrepreneurial spirit coming into this county and moving in and looking at Copperopolis, they're not going to have the benefit of being able to go to an appendice that would give them an overview about what area-specific expectations that they would have to develop in that area. They have to read the entire general plan to get a flavor of what they are expected to do in Copperopolis. Is that?
Supervisor, what we're planning to do in final form is to there'll be a section, we called it section 3 for the time being, that'll have all the community plans that have been rendered in this consistent format. And what you'll see there is a description of some of the history, a listing of the key issues, a vision statement, the principles. It'll also have a land use diagram that for that area. So you'll actually have sort of a pullout for Copperopolis or Moke Hill or wherever. But it'll be relatively short. I mean, it'll be 5, 10, 15 pages, depending on which
Do you mean as part of the general plan process or afterwards?
As part of the general plan process.
Well, I think as Larry pointed out earlier, ultimately there are no approved, quote, approved or adopted community plans at this point in time. That would be something that the board would do as part of the general plan process. So in terms of tweaking and how much room there is, there's quite a bit probably, depending on what direction you want to go.
Let me kind of cut to the chase, Mr. White.
Okay.
In the Arnold or Avery Hathaway Pines, since we're all fairly chauvinistic about our areas, and we want to tweak it a touch, is there an opportunity to do that? I don't know that we will, but if we do, I know it's not going to be a major overhaul or even a minor overhaul, but
I would say there's always going to be opportunities to fine-tune all of the plans relative to what's in the general plan.
okay. And the other is when the board picks an alternative, and then that's what we go out for to do the environmental impact report.
Yes.
So when that comes back, that could then mean that we...
And we had some people here talking earlier about the lack of teeth that your department has in the existing nuisance/noise ordinance. And I'm wondering, Jeannie, do we have any kind of an indication of how that particular action is moving through the
noise ordinance?
Yeah.
No, but I'll follow up on it for you.
Okay.
In terms of a study session?
Well, Mr. White, can you shed any light on how that's progressing through the planning department? Thank you for coming, Blaine.
As you know, the idea of a nuisance noise ordinance, an update, I guess, or an expanded ordinance has been on our to-do list for a while. What I plan to do is work with Jeannie to come up with a date where we could come to you, and this would be a joint session between the sheriff and us and you to talk about the components of that ordinance. And perhaps maybe we can do that as soon as March. I know we have a lot of things on the docket in February, but perhaps we can come to you in March with that as an item agenda.
Okay.
Need to make some modifications,
Yes,
correct?
that's correct.
Okay, so it isn't done till that's done.
It's not done till it's done. That's correct.
Okay, thank you. If there are no other questions from the board at this time or comments, I'm going to open it up to the public. Again, if you have questions, we'll be taking those questions down and responding to them at the end of the public comment period and at 5 minutes per person. And if someone has said something that is exactly what you were thinking, if you'd like to come up with something else, it'd be good so we don't have repetition. Appreciate that. Thank you. So who would like to start? CCWD, go ahead. Are you here as CCWD or are you here as a private citizen?
I'll be here representing CCWD as Water Resource Manager. I'll keep my comments very short.
Okay, can just introduce yourself again. Thank you.
My name's Ed Pattison, Water Resource Manager for Calaveras County Water District. One of my primary roles and one of the reasons I was hired at CCWD was to manage CCWD's water rights. CCWD, as the countywide water district, holds many rights on the 3 watersheds. We manage it in such a way that it protects the interest of Calaveras County presently and on through the next 50-plus years. As you may or may not know, we're required by public law to develop an urban water management plan every 5 years that goes through a similar process as the general plan update, where we have to project water supply availability and demands. And without going into a lot of detail about the legal complexities of water rights and mandated planning, I would simply like to say that the general plan is a key document that will be supporting CCWD's efforts before the State Water Board, which is a state regulatory agency that regulates post-14 water rights in California. For the Stanislaus, CCWD will be for the State Water Board in 2015. And our current urban water management plan update that is just getting underway now, along with this general plan update, will be foundational documents under review by the State Water Board in determining what rights we have or don't have. And if you follow the state headlines, water rights are under attack statewide. So we're a little concerned about what may take place in 2015, and I would like to caution the general plan team and the board that this is a key update and vital for the future of this community, not just for land use designations, but for future availability of water supplies and protection of water rights. I would also like to point out that there are a number of failing wells within the county, both in fractured rock areas as well as the West County area that overlies some of the alluvial groundwater basins of the valley that pinch out in Calaveras County. CCWD is doing its best to try to address failing wells, and I think it should be a key factor in the alternative.
I would like to emphasize, at least from my perspective, is that there is no place in the county that is more sensitive than Lake Tulloch. I mean, we heard this morning about a couple that have been trying to help, or it's actually a mother and a son, with that motorcycle problem. But the most effective thing that I could do there was to get Lockmere to go out there and shut them down because of the dust that was going off their property. We just simply don't have the ability to enforce anything from the standpoint of a noise level. So I know we don't want to have a decibel meter to be that criteria, but there's got to be some meaningful definition. So my suggestion, and I don't know whether I can get some backup on this, but we cannot go another summer without some teeth in our ability to enforce a reasonable level of law at Lake Tulloch and some of these other subdivisions. So, and if we were to work backwards from like the end of May, when the season cranks up there, let's make sure that we don't go beyond the point where we can implement it at the end of May, 1st of June.
And I think the noise ordinance, the way I think it's being proposed here, is it only requires a board action for adoption. So I think once we can get some specific direction, perhaps at this study session in March, we could move on very quickly with drafting that ordinance.
Okay.
I'll work with George. We'll find a date in March to schedule a study session with planning and
Thank you.
Sheriff.
Thank you.
Mr. Baker, it is board comment time. You had your opportunity. It is now the board's time for
I
theirs.
can't respond to what he...
No.
Not at this time,
No,
sorry, Mr.
not
Baker.
this time, Mr. Baker.
Okay.
You will be able to come to the public meeting that we will have on this item.
Can I ask one question?
No. You can speak to Mr. White when we take a break, which will be in a few minutes.
Well, I don't think...
Mr. Baker, you can speak to Mr. White.
Okay, getting back to board activities here, I want to point out that both the Supervisor Toffanelli and myself have been meeting for the purpose of discussing the manner in which we can make our public outreach more effective for the meetings regarding issues in Valley Springs and in Rancho Calaveras. We're having a meeting this afternoon to talk specifically about how to notify the public about some meetings that will be discussing the intersection improvements at Highway 12 and 26. We hear the comments that people are making about we're not getting informed, we're not aware of meetings that are taking place, so we have collectively agreed that we're going to try to do our best to fix that. So that meeting will be taking place at 3 o'clock this afternoon. I also will be going to the chamber installation dinner on Thursday night. We have, and I will be a judge at the 4-H presentation day at Jenny Lind Elementary on Saturday morning. And that concludes my report. Thank you.
Thank you. I have Ebbets Pass Property Owners Council this week, the Council of Governments, a conference call on administration of justice with the California State Association of Counties. I have Area 12 Agency on Aging, the Chamber, and I'll also be in Jenny Lind for the 4-H judging. I want to just report a moment on the budget scenario from at least California State Association of Counties.
And some of the implementation measures, because ultimately land has little or no value without water, and it is a key resource. The two go hand in hand. And we have the overdrafted groundwater basin of the eastern San Joaquin groundwater basin, which Valley Springs overlies, and CCWD as the groundwater management agency for that area is working with the state, as you know, through the monitoring of groundwater levels to try to develop a sustainable management plan for that West County area. Currently, it is dropping about 1 to 3 feet on average per year. And without some corrective action or surface water deliveries in the area, my projections are it will continue to decrease with an increasing number and rate of failing wells. So I'd like the alternatives analysis and the general plan to try to address some of these issues. I know that it's a tough area, and the relationship between land and water is vital, and as I mentioned earlier, it will be used in some of our water rights proceedings over this upcoming decade. Thank you.
Okay, in just a moment, Mr. Walensky has a question.
I know you're real familiar with the process by which the water element drafts were created. Are you satisfied that the interests that you just expressed are reflected in that, and you're simply asking that that be honored by this process, or are you suggesting that there's more work yet to do to protect those interests?
The water element was an invaluable process and really identified for me the importance of collaboration and working together between various groups. I've grossly underestimated the time and commitment and cost every time we begin these processes of trying to be inclusive countywide. The original water element cost was projected to be $50,000. We ended up at CCWD spending about $150,000 because of the interest in the water element and the number of various groups that wanted to have a role in that process. And once it started, we could...
To the issues that were brought up in this letter, which I assume you've seen or have available to you in your packets, that we have a stakeholders meeting before, not after the responses are already designed and put down in black and white. We all recognize, too, that not only Calaveras County, the whole country is in crisis right now. Looking over the housing element, many of the goals and implementations are suggested being funded by things like permit fees and general fund and that sort of thing. And since we had something like 126 building permits, something like that, issued last year, that's not going to bring in very much money to fund the kinds of things that we're talking about. And every time we talk about the general fund, we are told there's no money in the general fund. So it's a very serious matter. We want to make sure that we look this thing over carefully and that we all get to put our 2 cents in and put our heads together to see what we can do to try to make a document that has a chance of really being implemented and having an effect in the county. So that's one point. The second point I'll make very briefly, and I know you've all heard it from me many times before, but I guess there might be some power in repeating myself. I am a person who has a great concern about publicizing community meetings and events. And I brought it before the Planning Commission. I've spoken to George White about it. I've spoken to the consultants about it. So I know people know what my position is. I guess I do want to preface it by expressing great appreciation to the consultants for and the planning department for getting to me and others that I know saying, I know that you're involved in activities. Please give us the names of people that you see as key leaders. We want their emails. I know they made a big mailing to lots of people. And I laud that, and I appreciate it. My problem is that I want to make sure that people that we don't reach, people who are either new to the county, people who are unfamiliar with these issues, have a way of knowing about these meetings, the ones that we don't get to. And I guess my big beef today is the county website. I went to the county website maybe 5 times between the first time I got my email about this meeting, which I spread out, and all the way up until yesterday. And I do not see one announcement that says the consultants on the general plan will be meeting with the Board of Supervisors on such and such a date to discuss the process. Now, if you go into the board agenda and you read it, you will see it. Okay, so I'm just saying, I know the IT department has some problems, but I don't see why the home page of the website cannot announce important public meetings like this. It's just a single line, and then refer, go to planning for further details. So I'm asking somebody to try to take responsibility for doing that with all these important meetings coming up, and we don't want people coming and saying, we don't accept this because you didn't tell us about it. Thank you very much.
That's a good point.
Good morning. My name is Suzanne Rustin. I'm from Mountain Ranch. We submitted what we thought was a community plan. It had all the required elements. Somehow, I do not see that plan up there. If it became a vision, it would be nice to know. And we'd like to be reassured that the visions are treated equally as the plans, since we put in the same amount of time and with the same amount of people that were involved as the other plans. Also, we may be small in people numbers, but we're very large in land areas, and so you have to assume that small is powerful, and I think I speak for all the other small communities in District 2. So I'd like some kind of response that the visions will be treated equally as the plans.
Okay, thank you. Ms. Costello.
Hello, I'm Julia Costello from District 2, McCulloughney Hill, and I'm here to talk about historic resources. You're all surprised. I do have one small correction on the slideshow. The McCulloughney Hill plan was listed as a new plan, but it dates back to 1983. It's one of the original county plans. So, and what you have is actually pretty much what was drawn up in 1983. We tweaked a few things, but you're dealing with an old plan. And part of this old plan had a designed historic district with boundaries, had an inventory of historic buildings, recognized inventory of historic buildings that was in our community plan, 1983, and the provision for design review guidelines. So all of these are integral to the old McCulloughney Hill community plan, and also basic to any county's handling of their historic resources. And I'm sure if Brenda has worked in Benicia and Sonoma, she knows that historic districts, protection, identification of historic resources, they're all part of the EIR process, and there's something the county should be doing. I hope you all are grateful that Judith Marvin and I did not lobby for an historic element of the community plan. We thought you had enough on your plate. But I'm hoping, I'm hearing the standardization of community plans as kind of a major goal of the consultants. In that case, I would rather hope that McCulloughney Hills historic districts, inventory of historic resources, and design review guidelines would provide a model for that to be adopted countywide and in other communities, and not be cut off of our plan because it doesn't conform to a smaller outline. Any questions?
Thank you.
Thank you.
Darren Spellman from District 5. In regards to the water element and also the housing element in the plan, I'm concerned whether there are being revisions made, or I guess I'll be able to review it when it comes out, when it's published in a couple weeks. But my concern, attending the Valley Springs Community Plan meeting held in August of 2009, Mr. Pattinson from CCWD was there and gave some insight regarding the water issues, which we all are pretty aware of right now. Even with the existing approved lots in Rancho Calaveras, out in the Burson Wallace area and around Comanche, there's not enough water to support those, even the ones that are approved right now. So in terms of approving further lots or subdivides of land out there, that's a big concern for me. I know that that's not my district right now, but it could be realigned after the census. So, but even still, as a member of the county, and particularly the west part of the county, I have friends that live in Burson, and when they moved there, they have horses and things like that, and originally they just had to cut back so they didn't have a lawn and use the water to irrigate so their horse would have some stuff to eat. But now they're down to where they can't even hardly get potable water to run their household. So it's a concern, and I hope, I guess what I'm saying is that there's somewhere in the plan that's addressing any future development in those areas where water is a huge impact. Thank you.
Thank you.
Rancho. Hi, I'm Ben Hoekstra from Glencoe. I'm concerned about water as well, and I know that some counties in California have water recharge plans and projects underway. And the open space provisions of the general plan are going to function in that way. And many of Calaveras County is a watershed county, and water is our most important product. It's not an economic product yet, but it will be. And if you appreciate your next drink of water, that water probably comes from somewhere in the county, through hydrologic processes. And we need to protect those hydrological processes that bring water to our lips, and water to our crops, and water to our animals. And I'm hoping that the general plan will protect some of the BLM land that serves as water recharge zones. The 2009 BLM management plan put a number of their lands in keeper categories. The result is that many of the BLM holdings inside the county are by default available for sale in the future, and those lands provide us with water. So I'm very concerned that we protect these BLM lands from future development. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good morning, John Buckley, Central Sierra Environmental Resource Center. As I think board members know, our center has members both in Calaveras County and Tuolumne County. Over in Tuolumne County, I sit with developers and water interests and Chamber of Commerce and others on an advisory committee for a regional blueprint planning process. And over the last year, that process has almost completed a modeling exercise that helps that county to know if they do the things they're doing right now, they call it, baseline current trends, where over the next 10, 20, 30, I think 40 years, where will growth occur, what's most likely the pattern. I mean, they can't pinpoint each particular parcel, but they use the computer modeling of attractants and deterrents as to predict most likely where you will see an end product. And it's not unique. It's being done other places. Caltrans is certainly one of the key funders of a process like that. The reason I point that out is as we've gone through this process, and again, a wide range of interests, we've begun to see just in the modeling exercise itself.
Hey, well, we have to stop at 50,000. So it was on a fast track, which I think arguably was difficult, but it kept the feet to the fire, and I think was done very well. The county staff, as well as some elected officials and a host of groups within the county were involved. And so I'm very happy with the product of the water element. Having said that, however, the water element primarily is a policy and goals and objectives document that is looking to steer future growth towards city centers so that we can move away from some of the failing areas that are on wells like Diamond 20 and some of the wells in the West County area. I just picked those. I'm not picking on those specifically, but just to suggest that a number of these areas on failing wells would like CCWD to serve surface water. However, it's almost economically infeasible. We're still looking at various ways of doing that, but what we're trying to do is look forward, and when new developments come online, we would like to see city or treated surface water and wastewater serviced rather than
just use a quick example. If you have a big development project that's nowhere near a school, that's not perhaps as logical if it's a residential one, especially if it's aiming for being moderate level of income, as if it's located near a school, or vice versa. Are there the roads that the county is going to have responsibility for already in place, or are there not? And all of these things are looked at and just to see what's the output going to be from the current trend condition. And it was interesting hearing about what appear to be three alternatives here. The county staff over there and the supervisors who are involved are actually talking about something very similar. The current trend, some sort of intensive development, and something what may be more intensive development. And what I'm leading to is that one valuable piece of information for those of you who are decision makers is what will it really cost the county to adopt a particular alternative based on a range of growth scenarios. So will the county, quick example, I think you said Diamond X, was that with the one that was out there where, if the county periodically has to have staff drive that much further out to respond to a domestic dispute or whatever there, compared to if ag lands and especially rural ag lands are given a high priority for protection and they are not as chopped up or even having intensive development pushing right against valuable ag lands, does that reduce county expenses and costs for providing services, especially if there are times that the state mandates are already squeezing counties to the point of having limited dollars? So my question is, because we were told that Calaveras County was also participating in a regional blueprint process, my question is, will that process be informing this general plan update status report to some degree? And whether or not it does, will the EIR analysis and will the various alternatives have some sort of information comparison as to really what the county might expect in terms of service costs and those kinds of things, based on, again, whether or not ag land is being protected or whether or not there's more concentrated development or whatever the various scenarios. So I'm not advocating for any particular approach. I'm just hoping that the county will have the best available information to help assist you as you try to look at, what are the trade-offs, because everything is in trade-offs. So thank you.
Thank you, John.
Joe Kelly, I'm speaking to the agriculture element only. When and where was the Ag Coalition outreach for citizens, property owners, 10 to 20 acre agriculture A1 zone properties for the drafting of this document? This document does not address the state of California's perception that agriculture zone land is an interim zone for residential, commercial, and recreational use as stated in Assessor's Handbook 521. This document does not address the impact of the State Water Quality Control Board rules, the Port of Cologne Water Quality Act, the Clean Water Restoration Act, and non-point source pollution documents. This document only partially addresses infrastructure, water for agriculture. This document should be a proponent of addressing infrastructure, existing and needed, with an outcome value of build-out and when build-out will occur. An understanding of the infrastructure and build-out issue could offer economic pressures relief to traditional agriculture. If the preservation of traditional agriculture is important, rather than this arbitrary and capricious document, create a voluntary agricultural conservation zone, a perpetuity easement defined as forever enforceable deed restriction easement as stated on page 24. Before doing that, the unborn should be polled as to their considerations of agriculture. Does the applicability statement on page 24 apply to a cluster development project implementation measure, develop standards and criteria for the proper utilization of cluster development within? The methods of mitigation 2-to-1 ratio smell similar to the derivatives used in the financial collapse. Somebody tell me how this overzealous pile of meadow muffins solves anything. Agricultural lands used for the production of food and fiber are being deeded back to sellers in seller carryback transactions. This is not capitalism, it is an attack on our capitalist society. Page 27, agriculture mitigation lands, paragraph E, a restriction land utilization due to general plan designation for future residential. The current general plan lists Ag A1 properties as future residential. Does that mean you're going to change that designation in this process? What consideration is being given to those who purchased Ag A1 property with a belief their investment would be sound? Again, what about the state of California's perception? Page 10, paragraph B, range management practices, the term pond and spring development. A definition is needed with a caveat that any federal, state, or county laws violated during the development grandfathered and are the enforcement and responsibility of the county. Forest land conservation and production. The county needs to provide a disclosure of California Department of Forestry fire protections requirements regarding tree removal east of Highway 49 to those owners, potential owners, contractors, and other interested parties. Page 18, setback standards for new non-agriculture uses requiring discretionary approval. An overly restrictive setback requirement suffered without compensation by the contiguous property for the economic benefit of the agriculture property. Define new non-agricultural uses. Residential agriculture, RA, residential being the primary with a secondary agriculture use, and RR, residential being the primary with rural atmosphere being the secondary use used as buffer zones, are setbacks required. Adequate fencing. Define and list the types of fencing. Should the fencing be placed on the property line, the adjoining agricultural property owner should pay his fair share to include maintenance and damage repair. This is the most egregiously restrictive agriculture element to a general plan I have ever seen. It will only get worse when the RCD/NRCS alternative review process causes a grading ordinance update. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Kelly. There's nothing there?
No, is there supposed to be something?
Well, you just announce your name and we've got it.
I'll do my best. My voice is giving out on me today.
So you only want 3 minutes instead of 5?
No, I'm going to try to talk a little slower so that you can understand.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Infacino.
My name is Tom Infacino. I'm the facilitator for the Calaveras Planning Coalition. It's probably no surprise to you that we continue to support a general plan update with broad public participation. We will again help publicize workshop events if given the lead time and the information regarding the times and places. We encourage the county to make opportunities for people to participate in these workshops either on the website or by mail, since some landowners reside outside the county or will otherwise be unable to attend the workshops. Finally, I would like to reiterate a request that we made in 2006 of the Community Development Director. We asked that a formal process be employed to allow individual landowners to suggest proposed land use designations for their own land. That request was denied in 2006, but we hope you will reconsider it now. I have seen this done in other jurisdictions. It was done well recently in Amador County, and I want to sort of explain how they did that. First, landowners voluntarily filled out a form with their proposal. In Amador County, approximately 40 landowners filled out such a form. Next, the planning staff reviewed the proposals for consistency with the general plan policy framework and constraints such as water availability and septic capability, and then the county staff made their report. Then the Joint Board of Supervisors and Planning Commission listened to presentations from each of the landowners and from the public. Finally, the Joint Board of Supervisors and Planning Commission determined if the proposal was to be included in or excluded from the general plan update project description, which I think your consultants are calling the preferred alternative. So my question for you today is, will you consider a process such as this in Calaveras County General Plan Update? Thank you.
Hi, my name's Andy Ballantyne. I'm from District 5. One of the things that wasn't covered in the general plan by the consultants and that was sewage and sewage disposal. I think that ought to be one of the elements in the general plan, because that's very important to any type of development that we do. And the water's already been brought up, and I think roads ought to be brought up, and that ought to be put into the general plan also. Our roads aren't in the greatest of shape. While they're in good shape in Rancho because we have CSA 1, and we pay into that. But other roads in the county, those people aren't so fortunate. The other thing I wanted to ask is about they talked about all the different plans that are in different areas of the community. You know, we have the Valley Springs plan, we have the Rancho Special Plan. 604 is an area that we haven't heard from. We haven't heard from La Quintana. We haven't heard from Gold Creek. We haven't heard from Quail Oaks or the outlying areas. I would like to know what your plan is for all these
wells and septics. Having said that, however, we also, a strong interest was in private property rights, and people come to Calaveras County for rural open space. So what we attempt to do is try to balance.
Right now, these entities are governed by boards. They have community service districts. I'm sure they have committees that determine what goes on in their development. We have the Rancho Special Plan, and I'm told that not to worry about the Rancho Special Plan because we're going to be covered by the Greater Valley Springs Plan. Well, we don't want in the Greater Valley Springs Plan, and as I've said many times, you cannot have a plan within a plan. It doesn't work that way. And I wanted to know how you're going to address all these separate entities that are outside of Valley Springs. And I'd also like to ask why people want to include all these areas into the Valley Springs plan. And nobody has asked anybody whether they want to be included into this or whether they don't want to be included into it. And I agree with what Tom says. I think this should be taken out of the hands of COG, and I think the consultants should decide how the general plan is going to go and what should be incorporated into it. But and if you're going to do away with any of these special plans or anything, or if you're going to keep them, I think that we should have some kind of a legal document in writing. I just am not one that believes that just because government or the Board of Supervisors say so, that areas are going to be included or excluded. There has to be something in writing. And I think there should be a section in the general plan that addresses all these things that I'm talking about. And I think that maybe we ought to ask the people, like, what do they want? Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Valentine.
Hi, my name is Richard Clough, and I don't have a lot to say. I just want to hand these gentlemen a copy of the Rancho Calaveras Special Plan and let them take a look at it and see if they can find it to incorporate it into their plans. Thank you. Who's that man here?
All three of them are.
There you go.
Thank you. Does anyone else have any comments they'd like to make?
Good morning. My name is Fawn McLaughlin, and I live in McCollum Hill, and I'm a planning commissioner. And unlike Holly, this is my very first time before the Board of Supervisors, so I'm a little nervous. I just had a couple of comments, and one kind of is related to Mr. Valentine's, and that's on the Valley Springs. aspect of the alternatives. And it seems to me, I just want to sort of weigh in with what Mr. Tryon said, is that in the general plan update process, Valley Springs was considered in the baseline report. They were considered in the issues and opportunities report. It doesn't make sense to exclude them, I think, in the alternatives report. So, I would certainly encourage the county to prepare alternatives for this sub-area, just as they're doing for the other communities. The other comment I had was kind of tagging on to Holly's, and that is on the communication aspect of this whole process. And especially if you review the timeline that was presented, I mean, March, April, lots of things are going to be happening. In my experience on the Planning Commission, with people coming up and talking, we often tell them that a lot more information is being funneled through the website. So we're increasing their expectations to find more information there, and I think it seems more and more often we're letting them down. And I think this notice of this meeting is a perfect example of that, where, I mean, you really couldn't find it unless you went to the board website, and how many people are going to do that? And then you see an agenda, and then you have to scroll down. So really encouraging the county to put extra effort in noticing, especially this very important process, because it affects everybody. It's not just a parcel split or a tentative map. I mean, it's something that encompasses everybody throughout the county. The other question I had actually was on a lot of these optional elements, the draft documents. I mean, obviously some people are very up to speed on those. I don't think I've really seen them. Are they on the website as drafts, or could they be put on the website as drafts? Because I think it would be helpful for some people to get, have the opportunity to at least look at what's being discussed. And the one last question was, the consultants had mentioned the sub-areas. Are these, as sub-areas being presented with these three alternatives, are those sub-areas the community, the defined community plan areas, or are they something bigger or smaller?
We'll answer all the questions at the end.
Okay. Thank you very much.
Thank you for your questions.
Almost lunch. I'll be short. My name is Bob Noble. I'm from Wilseyville. I'm a U.S. citizen, and I know you are too. And I need to go back, we need to all go back to our rights. The Constitution, the Bill of Rights. And we need to look at it, and I challenge you to go back and read it for yourselves. And read the search of what the decisions that you're going to make here. Because we have seen over the years how our Constitution has been stepped on in the name of growth. And I'm tired of it, because I made a commitment when I said the oath to protect and to defend the Constitution of the United States. So I'm urging you to each decision that you make to consider and look at the law, the supreme law of the land, which is the Constitution, and the decisions that you guys make also. Consider that the people that have fought for this country, who died for this country, and let's not sweep that under the table, but look at what the Constitution says and the people's rights for this country and for the decisions that you're making in this county. It's very important to us. And I think we need to bring that back to the surface, that it is our forefathers. They knew what was taking place and what was going to happen, and that's why they wrote these laws, and we need to defend them and do what the Constitution says. And I challenge you, all of you, even in here, to read the Constitution and read the Bill of Rights, for our rights are very supreme to this land, and we fought for it, and we don't want to lose it. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Noble.
Hi, my name's Mickey Williamson. I'm from Murphy's, and I just have a quick technical question that perhaps the folks can answer. Volunteer said today that the baseline report is a final document now, and I'm not sure that that's the one that's on the website, and I just wondered whether public comment that was made on the baseline draft has been incorporated into that as part of it being a final document. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good morning, Joyce Teckle. I have a question from Catherine Jackson, who was unable to be here today. Do the consultants intend to put a cumulative impact standard in place in this general plan? Thank you.
Thank you, Joyce.
Hello again, my name's Terry Baker, and my question and my concern on this general plan is that what happened to the ordinance 2905, the Blue Mountain Commercial Center, could actually happen to anybody in this county because it was done incompetently. We live in a residential subdivision we are on 4 and 5 acres. We were zoned unclassified, and it was changed to residential agriculture. Well, as soon as the word agriculture got in there, all of a sudden that meant they're agriculture. They're A1. They're equal to A120. And that's the problem that we're having with the Cock Ranch out here is they're not zoned for this. They have never been zoned for this. It's even gone to court, and the judge said it's not zoned for this, but the word agriculture is in there. And even though they're on 4 acres and residential ag doesn't even start till 5 acres, they don't even qualify for residential ag. But they got grandfathered into the residential ag, and now that they got the word residential in there, now they're equal to 20 acres on agricultural 1. Residential, the primary zoning is residential, not ag. The primary zoning for A1 is ag. It has to be on a minimum of 20 acres. We're on 4 acres. They're on 4 acres. Now let's talk about the watershed coming from those 150 cocks and hens and roosters and goats and ducks and all of the doves that they have in these illegal coops that should never even be on the property. But since they're RA4, they're equal to A1. So they can do anything they want. And everyone in our subdivision is now
needs between rural open space, wells and septics versus that sprawling all over the county and trying to encourage some infill or types of ways where we can economically serve infrastructure for surface water and wastewater.
Reading the tea leaves from what you just said, I'm taking that you feel that there's more work to be done on implementation measures later in the process, but that you're satisfied with the basic principles.
The basic principles are sound. I just think that what we're learning more and more about failing wells, the overdraft situation in the West County area, some of the even valley interest in Calaveras County in terms of our surface water rights. We're negotiating with East Bay Mud, San Joaquin County, various other agencies downstream, and I guarantee you with the recent legislative mandates on 20 by 2020, water conservation, and some of these other programs going on statewide, that metropolitan areas as far as Southern California.
Devastated, lack of sleep. When I get in my car and drive home, I'm going to be driving home DUI, and that's driving under the influence of insomnia, okay? And that happens every day up here. And these roads are dangerous enough to have people driving asleep, pissed off, because every morning they wake up at 3 o'clock in the morning. Do you want me to show you what they sound like? I know you don't. We hear it every day from morning till night, all because we were rezoned RA. We're going to have to appeal this whole rezoning to get this straightened out because it was done incompetently. I would like, if possible, I forgot her name. I forgot your name. Holly. I would like Holly, who helped to rezone the Blue Mountain residential subdivision, which is now a commercial subdivision, to explain how an RA4 is now equal to A1. If you would, please.
Okay, that's right. Are there any other public comments or questions? I'm closing that. That's not public hearing. I'm just closing it all off. I'll bring it back to the board. Does the board members have any questions or comments they would like to make? Tom?
Okay, I'll give my comments, and let me just sort of start back at the point of beginning. I was a very strong advocate of updating the general plan and not doing the community plans at the same time, and then coming back and doing the community plans. The reason being that the general plan, I believe, will be much less controversial than the community plans, and the reason is what causes controversy are people, and they live in the communities. And probably most of the comments here today concern community plan updates and not the general plan update. So as being the board has given that direction, and I was overruled, let me talk a little bit about the community plans and some of the controversy that I think is here. It seems to me if we're going to do the community plans, the first thing the board needs to do is establish what the boundaries of the community plan will be. It seems to me it's awfully hard to do studies and come up with a recommendation for a community plan if you don't know what the boundaries are. So, and half the stuff in Valley Springs is because no one's ever established. I mean, they've come up with a boundary, in my opinion, probably doesn't make any sense, and we have not had any discussions amongst the board or with staff as to what an appropriate boundary should be. So it seems to me, number one is we better establish what the boundary is, and the board needs to do that before the consultant and staff spends a lot more time on the community plan update. Secondly, and the board has heard me say this many times, probably a lot of people here haven't, and I don't know if our consultant has, but it seems to me within the community plans, one of the requirements that's absolutely necessary if we're going to have any decent growth at all is that all development within the community plan area needs to be on public water, public sewer, and have county roads built to minimum county standards. And quite frankly, as you look at the boundary, you really need to look at those three requirements because they will also be extremely controversial. And we have lots of small independent districts, and I'll just take Murphy's in my area, our district, as an example. Community water doesn't service all of the existing community plan area. The sewer district doesn't service all of the community plan area. In my opinion, when we get to Murphy's, and I see you had it, Murphy's, I should say Murphy's Douglas Flat, sorry Douglas Flat, we need to, once we decide on the boundaries, there's going to be a huge fight with the service districts to provide the services necessary for the intended growth within the community plan areas. And, in the end, we may end up at LAFCO asking for some consolidations that may be contested, et cetera. So, the idea that we're just doing these community plan areas and they're just going to happen, we better know what the level of services are. We better know where the sewer's coming from, where the public water's coming from. It should be surface appropriated water. I've made statements in the past that I think both within the ag element and the water element, we should say that the first and the highest priority for well water is agriculture, not residential. And I very strongly hold to that objective. And if you want to live outside of the community centers, and for lack of a better term, if you want to exercise your rights to rural sprawl, you're on your own. And county government and CCWD, in my opinion, shouldn't have an obligation to bail you out when you're a resident living on inferior water for wells. And if we're going to have more enhanced agriculture, whether it be agriculture or orchards or other things, they are going to use a lot of well water. And once you start depleting that resource, you'll find that there's not enough water for residential, and if you deplete it enough, you'll probably get a fair amount of saltwater intrusion, which we already have, interestingly enough, in several parts of the county. And that'll finish off the ag that's there, too, if you're going to basically put them on saltwater or high salt content wells. So my own sense is, as you do the community plan updates, we need to consider a lot more than just sort of a boundary on what we'd like to see. The board better be willing to go to the mat to provide these level of services before LAFCO, if that requires consolidations or eliminations or whatever of small special districts that do not wish to expand. And I can give you 2 of them right in Murphy's. So, which is why I still think we should be doing these community plans one at a time, not as a mass community plan update as part of the general plan update. Because the community plans, we absolutely have to get right if that's where we're going to have, if that's where we want to target the vast amount of new residential, commercial, and industrial growth in the county. So those are my comments on community plans.
I was just wondering if the board really wanted to ask questions, but that's okay. Questions, comments, go ahead. Steve.
I too have mostly comments, but I'll try to throw some questions in to please the chair. I think I've been concerned about the tenor of our dialogue around land use and planning, and sometimes the level of dispute that we have when planning and land use interests collide. This county has been known for its sense of place, its sense of community, and I'm pleased that the people of my district came together, each in their towns, with a tough process, argued it out, voted when there were disputes, and managed to come up with some ideas about their belief in their place and what they'd like to see happen. I don't think that's perfect. I don't think anything that humans or government, or especially when the two are combined, we're never going to come up with perfection. But we've sure got to, when people talk about going back to founding fathers and some of the principles of the country, we also have to take a look at some of the basic values that were part of that. And to my take, the most important pieces of that was the right of people, despite their differences, despite coming from different countries, backgrounds, religions, and perspectives and views and philosophies, that we would somehow come together as a people and through democratic process thrash out those differences and somehow make progress. And for a couple of centuries we've done pretty well at that. I would hate to see it come to a crashing end here by a dissemblage and a level of process dispute that keeps us away from getting to the real content of our issues. And so for that reason, the thing I want to comment the most about is the idea that the public needs information. Our communications from government have to be a lot better than they have on this recently. Our website needs to be updated.
California will be looking at Calaveras County water rights.
All right, thanks.
Thank you. Someone else have comments? Just please, just come on up.
Yeah, I'd like to comment about special plans and how they'll be incorporated into this general plan.
Okay, thank you. We'll answer that question at the end. That's a good question.
Thank you.
Madam Chairman, members of the Board of Supervisors, I'm Al Segal, the Taxpayer Association, and I appreciate all the work that's been done. I attended some of the workshops, particularly the ones on water and also affordable housing. I think we discover sometimes that government is not perfect. And there's, I'm sorry, Rita, I'm sorry.
You've had your 5 minutes.
One example could be the state mandated that all counties
have our new general plan coordinator, and I would ask Brenda to please make sure that all information necessary for adequate public involvement, timely public involvement, and thoroughly informed public involvement be the mission of, at least one of the missions, of your effort. I do not see a way to discuss things in the absence of facts. And I think that the reason we're so engaged in process disputes, saying we failed to get the information necessary to make a decision, that ultimately is government's obligation to the people. If we have information, we've got to make it easy to share. Now, let's also recognize that certainly in my district, and I don't know how the others are, but I can tell you that a good portion of the people in my district do not have computers. Many of the people, some of the people, don't have houses. What I think is important is that we come up with different ways of posting information. Most people have a post office box. So posting in our post offices might be a very good way to pass information to some other people. I also think that although we've had our differences on this board about using the reverse 911, that for big meetings, for things that are critically important to all the people of Calaveras, that there be a quick phone message saying there's a meeting important to you happening here at this time in this place in your community could be something that we might want to at least think about for this process, if not others. But if we can't do that, then sometimes a direct mail or some other form of universal notice would be a good thing to do, and it would avoid, I would say, many hours of the kind of anger that has been visited upon this board when people do not get the information necessary to participate. I view the anger actually as potentially
affordable housing element. They base that on statistics that came from primarily the Association of Realtors showing the relationship between incomes and home prices, and they called it an affordability index. And they thought that maybe the government local governments can manipulate the market in some way to more equalize that so more people could have homes. And although the intentions are great, when we look at when government tries to do things, they take a set of assumptions in a period of time when everything's changing. There's no static that you can say that, okay, here's our resources. All we need to do is have a plan to redistribute this or these uses, and then everything's going to be fine for the future. The best plan that mankind has probably come up with is our U.S. Constitution. And the results of that are demonstrated to be just fantastic, because what it did, it relied on people to control their own lives, not to look to government to control their lives for them. And so the prosperity that Western civilization has enjoyed has been basically based on people having the rights to property and liberty, and also life, liberty, and property, and it's functioned very well. So in looking at the general plan, its principles are not based on the U.S. Constitution, particularly the Fifth Amendment, which talks about those three basic rights. It's based more on social theory, and it's only as valid as the information going into it. It's like our computer friends say, garbage in, garbage out, GIGO. Well, we have GIGO happening here, and I think the taxpayers and the property owners would be most concerned that this process would include the protections in the U.S. Constitution on individual rights. And the best way to do that would be in the beginning of it, in its policies and goals, so that when we get into detail, there'll be some limit as to what the government can to tell people what to do or not, what not to do. And by having those protections, we'll be most likely have a better tomorrow, which means we have to be flexible as much as possible. And I don't have the expertise in this, and I don't think I can get volunteers together to provide that, other than to perhaps look at possible negative consequences that could occur. These were previously shared with you at other meetings at other times, and we'll try to continue to have input to help make this a worthwhile venture. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Segali. Ms. Mines?
Good morning. My name is Holly Mines, and I think you've You've seen me before. I'm from Railroad Flat. Today, I'm representing both, I would say, the Calaveras Planning Coalition and a stakeholders, a group that we have also called a stakeholders group that is attempting to sort of oversee the housing element process. When, as part of the Planning Coalition, I agreed to sort of focus in on the housing element, and in doing that, I tried to bring together as wide a variety of people as I could attract to be on top of the housing element. As was already pointed out by the consultants, I think everybody's aware that the housing element has a slightly different process than the rest of the elements. It's already been submitted once to the Department of Housing and Community Development, and just in mid-January, the county received a letter responding to the initial draft of the housing element. Now, it must be responded to, and I appreciate very much the consultants, and I've also talked to George about the fact that there will be meetings held of interested stakeholders to discuss the response to the housing element. However, my big concern, it wasn't clear to me during the presentation just in what order this response will be crafted. I'm just making a plea that before the sort of official county and consultant response.
That is, we have people in this county who care about it. They care about their communities. They care about outcomes. They care whether they're in or out of one plan or another, and they want to be the people who determine the future for the community they live in. That's a good thing. And nobody should be defensive or feel bad about that. What we should find a way to do is open doors and make sure that those doors behind them are full of information that is shared universally. So that's the bulk of my comment, but now here's a few more. I have a question. I've got one. I'm coming. East Bay Municipal Utility District put $500,000 through the Upper McCollum Watershed Authority to creating what's called the Warmth Watershed Assessment Tool. It is something that's a tool that nobody's picking up because the money was there to create it, but it was not there to allow counties or to subsidize counties for its implementation. However, it's free. The question is whether anybody here is going to use it. It will tell you very accurately, within a 96th percentile, what any particular projected option, what its effect on water quality.
Founding fathers and those types of ideas. I would like for you to just reflect back upon a time at the beginning of this country when our number one founding father, George Washington, took an extremely active role in the very rigid, what might be thought of a grandiose plan, which has turned out to be the wonderful plan of Washington, D.C., where the government at that time, such as it was, took it upon themselves to plan that very large area that ultimately became our nation's capital from swamp lands along the Potomac. I don't think that there was anything accidental or arbitrary or capricious about that effort. I think that we were all very much in the debt of our founding fathers for having the vision to do that. I mentioned earlier in the comments to you about how long that I've been involved with the efforts of our community of Copperopolis. I wish you had gone to the chili cook-off last Saturday, where there were thousands of people enjoying themselves in a fabulous town center that virtually was not there 3 years ago. And I would submit to you that if you look closely in the vision statement that we came up with back in 2001 for the Copperopolis community area, and also in the draft plan that we have submitted to you, that the specific location or the hoped for building location for at that time, hoping for a future development should occur at that intersection, and if it was going to occur, it should have some thematic consistency with the historical aspects of our county. I don't think that what happened there happened by accident. They took our words, heartfelt words, to heart, and the developer built something that it was really magnificent. It was one of the most enjoyable events in that town center yet. This is all kind of a painful but very necessary process that we're involved in. I have a kind of a favorite quote in regards to these types of activities, that as a group, as a county, the people in it, we can continue to get the kind of communities, or we can accept the kind of communities that we get, or we can work to develop the kind of communities that we want. And I think that we'll get there finally, not without a lot of browbeating and arm wrestling, but it's all part of the process. I mean, Gary and I have been, or Supervisor Toffanelli, I should say, have been trying to address the concerns of the Rancho Calaveras property owners, and we're trying to bring that process back into a central ground that we can also not throw out the wants and wishes of other people that live in the community. So we have a meeting coming up on the 23rd that should give an opportunity to have people come and express their wants and wishes about the kind of community that they want, and I'm frankly looking forward to it. So there was a question. Mr. Ballantyne has gone. I think he specifically said something about that he was emphasizing his desire to make sure that wastewater was a consideration in the general plan. That is very adequately covered. I mean, the water element is, of course, water and wastewater. So the one can't be discussed or considered without the other. And that's to the credit of CCWD, when they ponied up or made available $50,000 for the purpose of writing that water element, or facilitating the coordination effort that required. I thought that it was a little low on the estimate, but I participated in that. Many of us did, and I'm very proud that we're going to go forward with our general plan with that water element in it. I'm very concerned, and I think that all of us in this county should be extremely concerned when you read planning documents from San Joaquin County that are very unabashedly stating in the first paragraphs that the water that they're planning to use to develop their communities in the valley are going to come from Calaveras County. That's I mean, they're not holding anything back about their plan, and frankly, if we don't have an adequately structured general plan that goes to 2035 and beyond, if we can't demonstrate that we have a plan to use our own water, they're going to get our water. Simple as that. End of discussion. So for anybody who feels like that this process is an intrusion on individual property rights or an affront on the Constitution, I'm very committed to protecting the rights and privileges of everybody that lives in this county, both now and in the future. I wanted to ask Mr. Kelly, how do we go about polling the unborn?
In the interest of time, so we can have Mr. Hill and Mr. White answer questions, I have one question. Unclassified, will that change in the general plan process, so we no longer have unclassified? Mr. White, it's time for you to answer questions.
Okay. Unclassified actually is a zoning district, as you know, so it probably won't be dealt with in a very direct way in the general plan, but it's our hope that through the implementation, that is either goes along with the general plan or subsequent to the general plan, that unclassified will cease to exist as it does today. And I don't know if you, we made notes here while we were going along. I don't know if you want to just run down.
Could you just answer the questions?
Yeah. Not every commenter necessarily had a question, but we'll try to run down them the best we can.
Okay, thank you.
And some of us may jump in here at different times. There was a number of questions about the status of special plans, special districts, that sort of thing throughout the county. We're not altering, amending, changing any plans that haven't been submitted to us for that point, for that purpose. In other words, communities have come forward, they've submitted plans to us, new plans, revisions to existing plans. Those are the ones that we're dealing with. All of the other plans, and we are not endeavoring to change those plans.
If somebody from a special plan area, if a group, let's say is any one of the neighborhood organizations, wanted to put their plan and integrate it into the general plan as consistent or similar to a community plan submittal, what will be your take on that? For instance, one was submitted today. How will you respond?
Well, it's a good question. Obviously, there was an opportunity to deal with individual, communities over the last year or year and a half. The further we get along in the alternatives process, the harder it is, to be perfectly honest, particularly if there's changes proposed. And I guess we would attempt to respond to anything that was proposed to us, but I think at some point we might have to say that's more than we can handle at this point, and it might have to be a separate but discrete process outside of the general plan process. Moving on, there was a number of comments about the value of communication notice and all those sorts of things. Obviously, we feel exactly the same way. At times, we encounter limitations that are unexpected. We're endeavoring to continue to reach out to as many people as we can, and we're always open to suggestion about where we can notify people. In fact, some of the ones that you made today are ones I hadn't really thought of before. So, I'll continue working with Brenda and our consultant team to try to come up with newer and maybe more creative ways to reach out to people. So we will continue to do that. Let's see. There were a number of issues related to specifics within, specific community plans. For example, there was a vision about Mountain Ranch, historic resources in McCollum Hill, those sorts of things. And Larry can add to this too, but I don't think Larry meant to say that we were going to homogenize these plans. I think what he meant to say was we were going to try to use standard terminology to the extent that we can, try to make it consistent with the language in the general plan itself, but maintain those visions, those statements, those things that are particular to those communities, as well at the same time. Obviously, it's a tricky thing to do, and we'll be maybe walking a tightrope there, and I think as several of you pointed out, this community plan part of the general plan is going to be the heaviest lifting, I think. And we recognize that. Obviously, not just Valley Springs, but all of the other plans as well. That being said, there is going to be an iterative process before any of those community plan documents are finalized. We're going to reach out to the folks that actually developed those plans, wrote those plans, and at least vet any language changes with them. And with members of the community to the extent that that's possible, so that we're not coming to you with a plan that is completely different than what was originally proposed. So we'll continue to try to do that. Let's see. There was a question about modeling within the general plan and the EIR, talking about the services that the county would provide, relative to whatever alternative is provided. Obviously, we have to scope that in the EIR. We have to deal with any impacts, cumulative or otherwise, in that EIR document, and we will do that according to what the law requires us to do. There was this comment, I think, that...
And quality would be. It is free, and there are two people at East Bay Mud who still hold that dear and would love to share it with this county, have made presentations to this Board of Supervisors twice, and yet we have yet to pick that up. My question to you is whether you will take them up on the offer before we make another foray into betraying our water interests for quality and quantity and not connect it to land use decisions. Third, I want to thank my folks, especially Julia Costello from Moke Hill, for reminding us all that one of the great treasures, one of the reasons we all kind of love our communities, is that we are historic, that we have places that have value, and it's part of our sense of place that these last buildings are still with us. And I think that's an important value. I think it was reflected in the surveys that happened, but I haven't heard a lot of talk since, and I would very much, although I shudder at...
Linsky picked up on, and Supervisor Tofinelli, about a process by which individual property owners could propose land use designations, I suppose, on their own property. I haven't seen this happen exactly the way Tom indicated. However, I have seen it happen towards the tail end of a general plan adoption process, where a number of property owners who still had some disagreements about what was in the plan came forward, made proposals for land use designations. As Tom indicated, the staff would analyze those proposals, bring what constituted a white paper back to the board or to the council in the case that I was referring to, and some decision would be made as to whether those were acceptable changes or not. And I think, I'm not sure that we have actually thought about this before today, but I'm certainly not adverse to the idea completely. I think we have to fit it into what we're doing. I think it's not something I think that we can achieve before the alternative, certainly. I think it's something that would be down the road. But again, it's something we could talk about if it was something that the board is interested in doing.
So I think what the board's saying is that, like, maybe just some kind of protocol. It doesn't need to be as sophisticated as others, but...
Yeah. Well, we can talk about that. Again, I'll look to the Amador model. We'll see what they did. I'm not sure exactly what they did, but we can certainly look at that. And I've seen it in other places. So, yeah, I think there's something that we can look at there.
Thank you. Mr. Basimo, do you need to speak?
Oh, yeah, I just wanted on this topic. I'm also familiar with a model that Mr. White just suggested about doing it at the end of the process. I saw that done in El Dorado County. The problem with waiting until the end of the process is that by that time, the EIR has already been completed and all the evaluation of the impacts has been done. So if you wait until the end of the process, you may end up having to delay the process with further environmental review. If you do it earlier in the process, then you've identified what you're including in the general plan project description, or as they are calling it, the preferred alternative. And that way the EIR covers all of those changes. Thank you.
Good point. Thank you.
I think Supervisor Thomas answered the question about considering wastewater as well as water, which is the same thing I was going to say. We will look into whether the baseline report is the final report or not. That was a question that somebody had asked. And, okay, maybe we have an answer for that. And there was a question which I think was related to environmental impacts, whether there's going to be a cumulative impact standard was the question. Typically, we deal with cumulative impacts through the environmental process, so that the IR will deal with those cumulative impacts, and that's required for us to do, and we will do that. And those are the ones that I picked up on. Maybe Rick and Larry may have picked up on a couple of others.
Go ahead. What was that one? Sorry.
The one about the final report for the baseline.
Right, yeah. So the version of that that's on the website is the public review draft that was released, and we received comments on that during that phase, and that will become part of the adopted general plan, but we are planning to make revisions to that based on comments, but it will be as part of the full general plan document, which includes the baseline report and then the policy document.
Rick, would you also answer the question about the sub-areas in the alternatives report?
The sub-areas, yes. And this will be released shortly, so you'll be able to see maps and everything. But we divided the county into 5 geographic regions, which don't correspond with the districts, but correspond with, and that's just for the purposes of analysis in the alternatives report. We also, in terms of sub-areas, looked at, used the 2000 census defined places as a geographic boundary to look at modeling potential impacts of the alternatives. And I guess I can also expand on, I think there was a question about the blueprint process and land use modeling, and we are using the U-Plan model that's being developed with Calaveras and Tuolumne and other counties as part of one of the tools that we're using for the analysis in the alternatives report.
Let me weigh in on a couple questions. One was the question about the optional elements that I talked about and whether or not those could be posted. We can talk about that with staff, but the problem there is that those have come from different sources and they haven't all been reviewed by staff. So at this point, we're sort of reluctant to post those because they're just general. Some of them are very, very rough and others are more refined. So, but we will look into that issue.
I thought I understood, I could be mistaken, but I thought I understood to be like the water, ag,
Yes.
and economic elements, and they can't, or you don't recommend that they be posted?
Well, we haven't.
Even though they're like, could put draft all over it, or?
Well, they technically don't have any status because, I mean, they're proposals, but we haven't been able to look at them as a consulting team or staff and render any opinion. So we're reluctant, because they haven't gone through any vetting process, to post those.
All right, thank you. But I think the intent is that we would like as much on the website as soon as possible, is what I think is being asked by the community. And
we hear that
we understand that. Thank you. Steve?
I did have maybe a little further, based on your explanation of sub-areas. I think you've probably heard a little bit today about the definition of a planning area in Valley Springs. We went through the same thing in District 2. Imagine that when we started, we had Railroad Flat, Glencoe, Wilseyville, and West Point all in the same community center. All right? We started from half-acre subdivision over 24 square miles. It was all in one. It was very difficult to sort out where Wilseyville began and West Point left off, or where Glencoe came up the hill in relation to Sandy Gulch. And there were discussions both individually within communities and between communities. And those borders, those boundaries were settled before we got into the content, before we even got the invitation list to who was going to go to which of these 4 towns' meetings. If you were to have a sub-area that redivides that after we've sorted ourselves out, you would be throwing us back into the very spectacle that has beset this board for the last, say, 3 months on the question of inclusion of one community or another in a community plan process that's way down the road. Please do not make that error.
Supervisor, can I just add that for the purposes of the alternative to be published very soon, those lines were only drawn for analytical purposes. We say in the report, those are not policy lines. They're just a way of characterizing. Instead of saying, this is the change countywide, we wanted to be able to say, here's the change in different areas of the county. So we've created some lines and used these preliminary community plan boundaries as ways to explain to people how the alternatives are going to play out in those areas.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Mantier. Yes.
I just wanted to point out there was a discussion about posting certain elements on the county website. If people want to review the draft county water element, they can go to the CCWD website. It's available there. If they want to review the draft agricultural element, they can go to the County Ag Extension website. It's available there. And if the county would be willing to put a link on the General Plan Update website, that would be wonderful. Thank you.
Nature loves a vacuum, but in my view, we're creating that by not posting all this stuff. Let people participate. Don't own the process so exclusively. We can deal with rough documents, and we'll help perfect them. Harness the energy rather than create the anger, is sort of the way I look at it.
Okay, thank you. Is there anything else, Mr. White?
Could I add just a little bit more on the community plan? I've been reluctant to get into this topic because every time we do, things seem like they get confused or overly complicated, or people think we're doing something that we're not. What the board approved in the work program early on, this is a ways back, is to create a new standardized format for community plans. That was a key. Let's work everything, the existing community plans, let's work that into a new format, and everyone will have sort of the same table of contents, not the same policy, the same table of contents. The question was, are we really going to engage each community in an update of its community plan? The answer was no. That direction was no. So where we have 4 community plans that go back a few years, Arnold, Avery Hathaway Pines, Murphy's Douglas Flat, Ebbets Pass, we just worked in... I'm getting there. For those 4, we just try to reformat those into the new table of contents, okay? And do some editing only to get rid of redundancy. But there are 2 community plans that had community plans before where people have been working in the community to update those. So the question was, should we just reformat the ones that were done years ago, or should we take the new work that's been done and incorporate it into the new general plan? So the direction that we got was take the new work and plug it into the general plan. So that brings us up to 6. The community visions, that's a special topic. We could spend the next half an hour talking about that.
I'm open to it.
But in terms of Copperopolis, again, it's an emerging plan, and so we deal with it sort of like...
Thought of having another element, and I'm not proposing anything like that at this time. I'm hoping that that value will be reflected in all options, because I believe it's held strongly by the people of this county. Now, on the District 2 community plans, these were more than visions. If you look at the maps, they're more subtle than some. We didn't load it up with 50 pages. What we did was boil down the basic values of our communities and gave you maps and guidelines that we hope you will read and actually reflect in your detailed work. I personally will defend those, despite the fact that 2 or 3 of them have things that I personally disagree with. But the process was fair, democratic, and it was ultimately supported by the people in each of those towns. And I'm going to make sure that that process of democracy comes home in these documents, and I beg you to read them carefully and not write them off simply.
Dealing with San Andreas, we're taking new content and plugging it into this new outline, and then I don't even want to begin to talk about Valley Springs.
Well, Valley Springs had a community plan in 1974.
Yes, right.
So this is supposed to be an update of that plan.
Exactly, and again, as I said earlier, we were looking for the output from that update effort that's sponsored by the COG as input, and the direction was, when we get the output from that process, the county staff looks at the consultants, and then we plug it into the general plan. At this point, there's a question about whether it'll be done in time to plug it into the update. I hope that helps.
Well, would it help for your process for this board to set some form of a timeline for that process. I thought the timeline was last August, actually, and we sweated blood to get our stuff in by then. But if that changed, what is the new date, and can we abide by it would be the question. And I don't want to truncate any process that's going along, but what's a reasonable time frame so that we're not all waiting overly much?
Probably a loaded question in some respects. But
And I'm not suggesting that we even have an answer for that, but that we commit to having a definition at some point.
Well, I just want to recognize the fact that there is work going on in Valley Springs. I mean, I think in an ideal world, most of us would be happy to have an output, as Larry has suggested, so that we could, integrate that into the general plan. We're just not sure when or if that output's going to exist in time for us to do that. Obviously, we're in the alternatives phase. The alternatives phase is the backbone of the general plan. And once we have a preferred alternative, that's going to lead the way. That is going to set the direction for this general plan. So I can't say that there's an absolute drop-dead deadline there, unless you really want us to come up with one. But obviously, time is growing very, very short.
Well, I have a question then. Is it possible to, if the timeline goes past with Valley Springs to where the drop-dead date exists, is it possible to take the 1996 updated plan of Valley Springs and incorporate it into there, and then when the update comes, we have a basis to make the change?
It's exactly what we have to do. I mean, in fact, that's the fallback position. Yeah, that's exactly right.
Okay, any other comments or questions from the board? Okay, gentlemen, any other comments? If your questions were not answered, if you could please put them in writing and give them to Mr. White, we will get back to you. Thank you. This session is adjourned.
A vision. These have land use implications. They are consistent with the principles of each of these towns. They are different from each other by design because they are reflective of the differences. Can you imagine representing Sheep Ranch, West Point, Paloma, McCollum Hill, Railroad, Wilseyville, and trying to have them all be one consistent thing? It's not possible, and that's not our desire. We want you to understand those differences by reading our documents, our conveyance to you, and you'll see the language. There were cover letters in each of them saying, we'd like you to read this, to understand us, and to make options that are reflective of these principles and these basic land use approaches for each of the towns. Finally, I was intrigued by Mr. Infusino's thought that maybe there is, with all the arguments about constitutionality and the right of individuals and property rights, alongside our obligation to create general plans consistent with CEQA and land use laws in the state of California, I was intrigued with the idea that we could provide some vehicle for individual landowners to put their wishes in for the use of their land. I see some people here actually in the audience that have brought these things to us. Can we provide some vehicle? I think Amador's was proper. It balanced individual rights and wishes with the legal parameters that this process is housed in, and it gave a screen through which those could be evaluated. I don't know how other supervisors feel, but I would welcome such a process, messy as I know it would be. It would recognize people's desires to affect outcomes, or at least have the chance to. And it would be, and if we had the proper venue for it, it would be a proper way for people to have that discussion without essentially cluttering up the broad process of where there are universal applications that must take place for a general plan. I don't think it's simple. I think there's a lot of tricky aspects about the details of that, but I welcome the suggestion and thank you. Done.
Clear.
How many minutes was that?
19.
19 minutes.
That's fine. No worries.
Hopefully it was vaguely entertaining.
I gave you my 5 minutes.
Mr. Tuffanell.
I'm very happy to see the number of people that showed up today and had their comments, gave their comments. It seemed to be generally geared towards community plans. Most of the people came here representing either the committee or what entity it was that formed their community plans. They spoke on their behalf. I can't say that I completely agree with what Supervisor Tryon was saying, that we need a cookie cutter for all the community plans. I don't think in our county that's going to work very well. I think Steve hit on it with saying that each community has their own identity and the way they're set up and their visions for it. I think it's interesting with Mr. Infusino's comments that, in fact, that process or type of process is actually being done in the Valley Springs area, where I had a meeting with COG, and Jeannie was there, the CAO, and George was there, to where we expressed our concerns where the landowners there had an opportunity to write in and give their comments, what their future plans were for their plans. So that process is actually taking place in the Valley Springs community plan. I have some concerns about the smaller community visions, as you call them. I believe I have one in my district, which is Wallace, that submitted it. And I'm interested, when this comes back to us, what those type of visions look like. And at those times, I think we will have the opportunity to be able to look at it and give our comments along with the public, giving their comments and how they feel, how you used a word, your words were rendered. I thought that was a very enlightening word that you used for those community visions, as you called them, was what's going to happen to them. I hope it's not rendered down to the point where there are no longer special identities that the people out there that put them together envision them to be. There was a lot of hard work and a lot of time and a lot of effort put into a lot of those, and hopefully we can meld them into the general plan and everybody's happy with it. I know that you mentioned the Valley Springs community plan. I believe that George, I'm not sure if he's already asked you, but I think there's some type of meeting to be set up where you can sit down with us and at least give some comments to the process down there. Hopefully that will work out and we'll be given a little bit clearer direction to go, so that when it is completed, that we will be able to fold it in and not, as you say, render it down to a very small document. I think that's all for my comments.
Mr. Thomas?
Okay, I've detected a tone from a lot of speakers here today that is implying that there's something in our process that is taking away constitutional rights or found the